and welcome to a night race here for the 3 hours of Suzuka, round number 7 of the GT3 Endurance series by SimRacing.Club. And we've had a fairly interesting season so far, but one team has done very well from the beginning, and that is Burst Esport. And if all goes their way tonight, then they will be champions. So that is something that we'll be looking out for here during this morning session, as we may just get into sunrise at the end of the race. But here today, myself, Cameron Roger, joined with me today is Aidan Millward. And Aidan, this is going to be quite an interesting race for these drivers, racing in the dark.
Yeah, I've always found that racing in the dark, it's like someone's come along and moved all the corners around and moved all the brake markers and things like that. You have to kind of readjust. So hopefully everybody will have been done. I'm tripping over my words already. Hopefully everyone will have done their practice in the dark so they know where everything is and not try to practice during the day and things like that. Not seeing any forecast of rain, so we're trying to avoid having a rain-affected race, and that can cause more carnage. But still, in the dark, people are going to have to be driving along and try not to get distracted by flashing headlamps when people get lapped and things like that.
Obviously, 2 weeks ago now, we had the race of Suzuka for the VEC as well. So some of those drivers who would have been doing both of the championships, then they would have obviously had some practice already. And as you can see here, for the schedule, there's only 2 races to go. 3 hours of Suzuka today, and then in 1 month's time, on the 22nd of May, we go to the 3 hours of Spa, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to, with Spa being released only a short time ago now for R Factor 2, so it's great that we're going to be here. But on the screen now, you see the championship, and just look, 50 points for a win. So you can see with Burst Esport, they've already won 4 of the first 6 races of the season, and being 80 points ahead of Evolution Motorsports. From my maths, I believe it's the top 10. As long as they finish in the top 10, then it doesn't really matter what Evolution do. And obviously we'll work that out as we get towards the end of the race and see what position the drivers are in. But you can't count out the 2 Nita Velox cars there in 4th and 5th. Maybe not for the championship, but at least for the race today, it's going to be a pretty close one, Aidan.
Yeah, you wouldn't put it past Burst to wrap it all up tonight. They've got drivers like Davin Rocek, Jene Simičić, Michi Hoyer, who is in absolute sublime form at the minute. Basically cleaning up in FSR World Championship at the minute, with except his retirement at Zandvoort, which is quite unfortunate. But still, Burst Esport still carrying on that form they've put into all the other series around R Factor 2. The 2 Nita Velox cars there, as you say, they're pretty good, pretty consistent as well. So they should be able to pull something out.
And the main interesting point for the way the championship has worked as well is there's been certain, obviously Burst Esport have been good all the way, but there's been certain teams that have had a good run of form. Back at the start of the season, we did have R8G Esports. Obviously, they've dropped down the table a bit, having obviously not attended the last few races, but also then Nita Velox getting that win last time out in Bathurst as well. So I'm sure we're going to be seeing a few different names get there towards the top of the field, and is certainly going to be quite a fascinating race with how the darkness is going to affect things. Obviously, teams would have hopefully practiced in the dark, but it's not something that we do very often. But obviously, with this being a far east race, the race direction has chosen to have a morning race. That is something certainly good. And when we get towards the race in a few moments' time, you will obviously notice that the headlights are going to play a big factor. When there's a car behind you, it's going to light up the road massively. But if you're on your own, it's going to be a little bit dark, and I'm sure some drivers are going to be making some mistakes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my R Factor 2 on my other screen, and they're doing the warm-up actually in the day. So it's going to be quite the transition when it just appears black in front of them. But as you can see on the sort of establishing shot that we've got on the screen right now, there's not a lot of lighting. There's some down there by the support pits. You can see the Ferris wheel lit up, as it often is here at Suzuka, the theme park next door. So, like you say, drivers on their own are going to be in a bit of trouble trying to see where they're going. But if they've got cars behind them, then they'll be able to see well ahead. I feel sorry for the VR guys, because it's going to get bright in there.
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially when some drivers are flashing behind them. That always gets a little bit interesting, and it's going to be I think it's going to be quite a close race at the front, especially with those top few teams that we've seen throughout the standings. Was obviously Burst that we've mentioned before, but Evolution Motorsports are in there. Go Team Racing, they are only 5 points behind Evolution for second in the championship, so that's something to look out for as well. That fight for second and third, only 5 points between them, so that's going to be good because Evolution had a fairly poor race by their standards back in Bathurst. They had a penalty to serve and then a couple of other issues as well during the race. So they definitely lost out on points. But then also, Burst Esport as well had a bit of an unfortunate race back in Bathurst. But then that was Bathurst. This is Suzuka. A little bit, still a dangerous track, but there aren't quite walls directly on the edge of the track. So hopefully there's a few less mistakes. And also there's 22 cars here today. So a little bit further down on the numbers that we've seen in previous races, so there should be plenty of space for these drivers to get out there and have a nice clean race.
Yeah, saying that, there's not that many places to overtake. I mean, the only sort of stone wall place there is to overtake is the entrance to the chicane, maybe the hairpin if people get a bad exit out of Degner, but the first sector, it's all medium speed corners, so you're on the edge of aero and mechanical grip through there, especially in the GT3. So they're going to have to follow each other as close as they can without stacking it into a wall. So it's a very, very difficult track, but it's a track that I don't know many people that say they don't like this place.
It's an amazing track. I wouldn't be surprised if pretty much all of the drivers here today have this on their top 3 tracks in the world. Obviously, it's one of the sort of older tracks in rFactor 2 now. So hopefully at some point maybe getting some sort of a visual update, but as far as the track is concerned and how you drive it, it is unbelievable. Such fast flowing corners, really, really good flow to it, because a lot of these more modern tracks have these really awkward corners that get a little bit funny, but this just has so much flow and it just keeps going. I'm sure the drivers will be loving it during the 3 hours of Suzuka, and obviously they hopefully would have prepared their car enough to be nice and stable and comfortable during that 3 hours, because there are some very dangerous corners here. Despite there not being the walls really close to the track, you can still have a big crash here.
Yeah, it's one of these sort of modern Formula One arenas, so you can see there the 130R. Loads of runoff, but if a car snaps, diffuser stall, if they get a twitch of oversteer going through, they're following somebody, there's not really much stopping you hitting that wall on the exit, and also to turn 1 as well, pretty much flat. You're sort of braking through turn 1 into turn 2, and if you get a twitch of oversteer there, you're off into a wall there as well. So, like you say, can be quite dangerous, but still a load of fun when you get hooked up.
And it's good to see this being reintroduced to SimRacing.Club. I believe it 2018, so that's just over 3 years ago, I believe it was the last time that we raced at this circuit. So it's been off there for a couple of seasons now, both in obviously the VEC and also the junior category, which is now GT3 Endurance, but it was VLMC and VLMS. They obviously didn't go to it either, so it's good to see that it's come back, and obviously having the increased challenge of it being a night race is obviously going to be something that the team's drivers prepare themselves for, and hopefully when we see the grid in a few moments' time as well, we will then be able to see who is going to be challenging, and it is Cetres Velux on that pole position, with Rory McDuff, the winner of the previous race, followed by their teammate in second place, and Burst Esport there in third, with Go Team Racing in fourth, and Evolution Motorsports in fifth. So the big 5 teams are still there at the front of this race as well. Wanako there in sixth, very unlucky this season, followed by One Move, and Scuderia Mascala having a nice race there in eighth. Volante Racing up in 9th place, as well as one of the Speedy Mites in 10th place. Core Team Racing in 11th, and Pro Simtech with one of their cars up in 12th. We have Revo Satellite Racing in 13th. Snow Shatten Esports, who took over the HM Engineering entry, there in 14th. Joy Racing in 15th. They had a pretty good race last time out, followed by Speedy Mite there in 16th. Core Team Racing again in 17th. And Trojan Donut Automotive in 18th place. Seawolf in 19th. And Caspian Motorsports in 20th place. And then on the final row of the grid, we have Omicron Sim Racing and the Flying Goat. And those two teams at the back there, they have had quite difficult seasons. And I believe actually Cunnerup from Omicron is actually on probation because unfortunately he had a bit of a mare last time out in Bathurst. So hopefully if he does get in the car, he will be having a bit of a nicer experience. But now we're here on the formation lap. You can see the cars going out there, and these two Nita Velux cars out the front. It looks like they're pretty good on pace, at least in qualifying. So we're gonna have to see how that turns into the race. But if they can get away and they can work together, this could be looking pretty good for Nita Velux.
Yeah, Nita Velux have recently hired Timotej Andonovski from Pinsim Drillers, a team that just out of nowhere folded for some reason. But Timotej went to Nita Velux, so a quick driver at a team that sort of knows what it's doing. And hopefully if he's driving today, he'll be able to put in the pace, and hopefully they can hold up the Burst Esports crew in behind, as they just pop up on the screen there. I don't know where they'd gone, but yeah, Burst behind them. You'd think they really just have to finish, really, to seal the title, so it'd be interesting to see what their strategy is. Do they go and win it in a blaze of glory, or do they just play to the numbers?
Yeah, well, they could have won it last time out in Bathurst, but unfortunately they had a bit of an issue with Davin Rocek having an incident, which I believe he was caught up with another car's issues on that day. So they were in a good position. I believe they were leading the race at the point as well. So they obviously do want to go out with a win, or go out in terms of the championship. We've still got another race after this one. So I would assume they do want to win it, but they don't need to take any risks. If those Nita Velux cars are looking a bit feisty, they don't need to win it. P3 would be enough for them, so they need to just have a nice clean race. I believe it is Yerny Simoncic who will be joining Michi Hoyer, so a very good lineup there. That is one of the main reasons why they've been there at the top during this season. They've just got such a broad range of talent through that team. We need to see, are they going to stay there in third place? Are they going to try and win the race? We'll find out very shortly.
Yeah, the field just coming through the spoon curve here. Another place you don't want to lose it, because that curve on the outside will sort of pull you off to the right, and then you're in a world of trouble. And then down the hill, got some lighting here, so it's a little bit easier to see. And going past the support pits, you don't want to end up in those pits. I'm sure it's all barriered off, but it's when you're cruising around on the pit limiter, each lap just feels like an eternity, as we see Jerome Priolo at the back of the field in the Flying Goat, the only Mercedes on the grid. And you can just see ahead all those lights just lighting everything up. So doing their job, and the graphic upgrades to R-Factor 2 really shining here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That Flying Goat as well, that Mercedes. It's a shame that it's not really chosen it, just with the way that the car works and BOP and things of that nature. It's not the most common car, because it would be nice to see a few more of them. It's a really good looking chassis, and those headlights are amazing indeed. But we are now coming to the final couple of corners, and then when we get around this final corner, Rory McDuff will be going for the 3 hours of Suzuka. They won the race last time out. Can they go and do it again? They've had a bit of resurgence, have Nita Velux, as we get towards the start-finish line, where we're going to see the start of the race. And now we go. Who is going to get the lead down into turn number 1? And it seems that McDuff has pulled away fairly nicely from his teammate Christian Michel, and also Michi Hoyes. They've got away fairly nicely for all these drivers. No one having too much of a delayed reaction as we come towards the first couple of corners of the race. And it seems that they're going to be holding position fairly nicely, which is always good. No point to have a crash or two in the first sector of the lap. And it looks like we are getting through nicely, which is what we want to see. These drivers getting towards the race. But you can see as we get towards this part of the track, there aren't so many floodlights, and it's really dark apart from when the headlights come around. So you've got to be careful. Got to make sure you're spotting your apexes and not make any mistakes. But Aidan, I think that was a rather nice start to the race so far.
Yeah, it wasn't overly aggressive. I think people have sort of realised that, well, turns 1 through to about here, there is no point in trying to overtake unless a guy goes fully off the track, because it's narrow, it's twisty, the corners are fast, there's aero washes, all that stuff going on, and there's just no point. So everybody just as they were. I don't think anybody's actually changed position as Rory McDuff leads the field through the hairpin up the hill towards Spoon Curve. Michi Hoyer having a better getaway in this race than he did in the GT Pro Series the other week. Nice and calm. You know, it's still 2 hours and 57 minutes and a half remaining. You know, race is at 1 at the first corner, so no point in trying to force the issue.
Oh, yeah, exactly. These guys, they know what they're doing, especially the guys at the front. This top 5, 6, 7 teams, they are big names across R32, and especially with this car, for instance, Mitchell, as you say, GT Challenge Season 1 champion about a year ago now when that was taking place. So he especially knows these GT3s, but obviously Niederfelix, they've been around for many years with obviously different brandings, different names. And as we come towards the end of the first lap, they're going to be leading the way with both of their cars, and that is a very good start for them. And it's also good to see Evolution Motorsports staying in the fight after having a pretty mediocre run last time out in Bathurst. So it's good to see them challenging back, obviously second in the championship as well. So they want to be careful because they don't want to be losing out too many points to the likes of Niederfelix, who still within with 2 races left, that still leaves 100 points left on the table. So that means there's plenty of change potential for the standings. So you can't get too comfortable, and that is why they are fighting towards the end, despite there being obviously just under 6 hours of racing to go this season.
I said that I didn't see anybody go flying down the order, but Rob Moore for Seawolf Net Race, he's now at the back of the field. So he must have had a mistake at some point across the lap, and here it is. Here's the replay. Oh, I just lost it on the exit of Dunlop Curve, the scene of Jules Bianchi's fatal accident in 2014. So rather unfortunate corner to do that. And now on board with Leon Block for Evolution Motorsport coming through the hairpin. A little bit of a slow getaway out of that, but Nico Bartley can't take advantage in that big boy BMW in behind the big boy BMW. Half a second between them. Well, Roy McDuff has exploded into nearly a second lead already.
Yeah, that's looking pretty nice for them so far. It's obviously one of, well, in general, way of racing, especially in these longer races. In this first stint, you just got to see what gap you can get. But this is where you're setting up your strategy. If you push straight from the get-go, you know that you're going to be using a little bit more fuel, a little bit more tyres, and then you might be a little bit vulnerable later on in the race. We've seen many times where teams try and save a bit of fuel and have a lot shorter pit stop at the end, things like that. And that is this point of the race is where you're going to be setting that. So if Niederfelix is going off in the distance, it certainly looks like we're going to be pushing.
Yeah, it was Jeremy Bootalip going a little wide through the 130. I'll be interested to see what the track limit detection is like at that corner. You don't want to pick up too many track cuts at the start of the race. You're getting a penalty. I don't think there are any penalties handed out for this race. We'll start seeing those pop up in a bit when our race director Sean Jacobs starts applying those. Nico Bartley following through the S-bends that make up the first sector here at Suzuka. Just trying to keep as close as possible without that dirty air absolutely nerfing his front tyres. We've got yellow in sector 1. John Nelson's gone tumbling down the order for Omicron Racing. That's a spin at sort of the entrance to turn 2, but he's got it going again. And not going well for Omicron in the opening 5 minutes of this race so far.
Yeah, they've had a bit of a funny season. Have Omicron, they're down in 32nd in the championship. They got points in pretty much every race apart from round 2, but then again, points do go down to 30th position. So therefore, there's obviously a lot of potential for that. So they've at least been getting to the classification ratings for the race, but they haven't scored too many points. So let's actually see a replay. I'm assuming it's going to be Nelson on board into turn 1. This could be a very nasty accident, but he just goes a little bit too wide, hits that little bit of Astro and the curb, and then he goes for a little bit of a spin. And the fortunate thing for that is he only had a couple of cars to come past him anyway, so he could get back going pretty quickly indeed. As we jump to Mathieu Decroix, and this car has been a little bit of a weird entry for a couple of seasons now. One Move Esports, Mathieu Decroix's in there, also Roy de Munck. They have a very good history of racing in terms of their speed, but not necessarily finishing the races. And once again, they're in a good position today, so let's see if they can improve their position from there. But they also have Ludovic Ferry, who is generally a very quick driver as well, so do look out for that car a bit later on.
Yeah, it's Mathieu Decroix, not Jeremy Bootalip. Oops. My point remains, they're going wide at the 130R, so you don't want to keep doing that. But he's doing just fine in that one-move Bentley.
Yeah, the Bentley's an interesting one because obviously these drivers signed up to this back in I think it's August or September 2020. So this is months and months and months ago now. And obviously since then, the cars have changed a little bit. There's been a couple of BOP updates. There's been some aero updates as well. So quite a lot has changed to these cars. And as per the rules, they're not allowed to change their manufacturer. They have to stick with what they chose when they signed up to the series. And that has obviously changed a little bit. That's why, for instance, Mitch Hoy is in the Corvette, and a couple of other teams are in the BMW, because back then those were the two sort of main cars. And you see Nita Velix in the McLaren. That has now sort of come back a little bit with the way that the BOP and changes have worked. So it's been an interesting one to see that change throughout the season. As we're now looking at Flying Goat, those lovely headlights of the Mercedes AMG coming towards the hairpin. He's now got Rob Moore trying to recover to get back in front of him.
Yeah, Rob Moore struggling in the opening few laps here, but still Priolo, I should say, keeping that Mercedes in front for the time being. But like you say about the preferred cars back in 2020 when they signed up, was that Rob Moore? Well, there's a bit of contact there, I think, sending the back end of Priolo's car out there through Spoon. But the memes of it being the Corvette Cup and the Bentley Cup and things like that in not the Bentley Cup, the BMW Cup in other series. And now all the BOPs have been applied and it's shaken things up. So we've got two McLarens leading, we've got Corvette in second, and then a BMW. Two McLarens leading, a Corvette in third, and then a BMW in fourth. So we've got a wide array of manufacturers in the top 10. There we go.
Mathieu Ducrot going for a little bit of a spin. Just like the Omicron Racing John Nelson, he went off onto that AstroTurf, and it will get you. Unfortunately, he's gone down a couple of positions, but in his favour, he had a pretty nice 360 there, so he managed to get going pretty quickly, but that's not what he wanted. Having that 5,000 easy pass then for Andre Muscala, getting up into 7th place. And that is going to be a nice thing, because Scuderia Muscala, 7th place, that would be an amazing result for them. They have had a bit of a struggle this season getting up to speed, the two Muscala brothers. So good to see them up in a good position, and then forcing De Krop into a mistake. Now up in 7th place, so very good for them. So De Krop needs to come back. He only lost about 3, maybe 4 seconds from that, so it's not too bad really. But his tyres will be hurting just a little bit as well, as we're coming now to Joy Racing. Sends it down the inside. Massive dive bomb there. Goes for a bit of a spin with Delgado as well. Too much contact there. Nupped, I think you can tell from Aiden's reaction as well, was just a little bit late.
I've been playing another simulator all afternoon where that happens all the time, but that was an unnecessary send there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's told to hand that position back or get a penalty in the race for it.
Yeah, that's a little bit... It's a little bit of a tricky one, that hairpin, because obviously he's got the little kink before it, so just as you come around the kink, you have to commit or not, and obviously it gets to a certain point where you just can't back out of it, and unfortunately... just got there a little bit too late, was all over the curb, and then at that point, obviously, when you get to the exit of the corner, when the contact continues, you're just going to have a bit of a spin for the car on the outside. So Delgado will not be too happy with his Snow Shatton team getting dropped down to, I believe that's 17th position, 17th position for them. So let's have a look now at De Krop. Yeah, all over that AstroTurf, already sliding, and then the AstroTurf just gives up all the rear grip. And going for a nice little slide there, so he'll have to work his way up and need to get back past Volante Racing, who are having a pretty decent showing so far up here in 8th as well.
It's almost like you've got to keep the car exactly on the line through turns 1 and 2 to stop it from doing that, because the way the rubber works in Factor 2, it's all dynamic, so it will rubber in those little places, but you get too much off. The left side tyres aren't going to want to grip, but the inside tyres are going to want to grip, and it's going to cause you all sorts of hassle. So yeah, you've got to be so precise sometimes with some of these corners.
It's a very don't know what the word would be, but it really invites you to go quick into turn number 1. But the real important factor, obviously, for that sequence is the exit out of turn number 2 before you get the little straight section to turn 3. So it always really pulls you in to send it in really fast into turn 1. But you make the tiniest mistake, as you say, you go off that line just by not even half a car width, and you're going to be off onto the Astro. And then once you get to that point and you're all loaded up, there's absolutely no chance at all. As we now jump to Caspian Motorsport in this little four-way battle for P16, and that looks like Snow Shatter and Pedro Delgado going a bit wide there, and that's going to let Core Team Racing get up the inside. And if they're not too lucky, then Donut Automotive will also be getting there with the slipstream now coming down into 130R. This could be getting towards a 3-wide situation as we get towards the chicane. There side by side now into 130R. Delgado on the outside, can he hold it? Yes, he can. Nice defending there on the outside, making that little mistake into Spoon Corner. Now trying Donut Automotive trying to go around the outside of the chicane. But Core Team Racing are going to be holding that back, and there will be a contact there with Caspian trying to get involved as well. So nice little four-way battle here forming for P16.
Might have been a track cut for Caspian going through the right-hander of that chicane. You see some of the cars are cutting that corner quite hard, but then you get too much to the other side, it's going to be too much, and then the game's going to start shouting at you for that. As we now cut to the, I think it's the Valenti Aston Martin have done at Prodan. Keeping Mathieu de Crop in behind him. As we saw Mathieu de Crop have that little pirouette on the exit of turn 1, still going. His tyres are going to be a little bit second hand now, but still keeping it going. Run the tank down, pop some fuel in, do your driver swap, if indeed you are going to do your driver swap, and carry on. But yeah, as the fuel burns off and the car feels a bit lighter and feels a bit more nimble, they're going to want to try and start throwing it into turn 1 a bit more. But having seen what De Crop and others have done so far, it's here we go. It's like Gasper Zupan going wide through the first deck in the corner, but manages to keep it all in check. Hopefully no dive bombs into the hairpin this time. Nope, all nice and above board.
Yeah, and that Degner is also another corner. Well, the two Degners really, just like turn 1 and 2, where it's a fast entry into a slower corner, and that first apex really invites you to send it in there. But you have to be a bit careful. Unfortunately, Subban could defend that nicely and didn't make too much of a mistake. Or as Garadogliu did do a bit of a mistake there, but he managed to keep it in check. That's to just spread out this battle just a little bit more, and it does seem that Delgado has enough pace to get away from Core Team. But at least for now, they're going to be holding on as we go to the other Core Team Racing of Alice Plever in the car, now behind Cameron Sensano around the final corner. And it is actually a pretty long straight down to turn number 1, so we'll have to see how that slipstream is. It's downhill all the way, much more than what the camera shows, but the camera does now show De Crop going down the inside turn number 1. Does he go too deep? Is he going to defend the position? He manages to get it. Is Prodan still there? Yes, he is, but he obviously had to back out of that one because it's so hard to stay around the outside. If you just get pushed onto that Astro, you've seen what happens. So De Crow getting that position back, or at least one of them, now needs to chase down. A couple of seconds back to Muscala, who he lost that position to initially. But that was a fairly nice move there from De Crop, and just showing that it is certainly possible to overtake quite nicely down into turn number 1.
Yeah, it might have been a bit of a clench moment going through there as the back end stepped out, but De Crop learned from previous mistakes and managing to keep that, managing to get that up into 8th place. As Prodan hammering the curbs at the two Degners here. You can pick up a track cut on the exit if you use too much of that AstroTurf. I know that for a fact. And here's the replay of the move. Very nicely done. See that kick of oversteer as he got off the ideal line and back up to 8th place.
Yeah, but it was quite nice that he didn't just completely wash out into Prodan. So that did look like a pretty nice, hard but fair move there into turn number 1. So now Prodan needs to see if he can try and get back. Obviously, De Croo was a couple of positions ahead of him initially.
Sliding.
Yeah, he's certainly pushing. And that's one thing that those one move esports boys do, is they do push all the way to the end, and that does have its consequences with their finishing record in certain races, but they're certainly a very quick option. And now Alice Plever on the back of Sansano. Can he do a similar thing coming out of this chicane? He needs to get himself very close, because if you're just a little bit too far behind, then you don't quite get that peak slipstream that you need. But he's certainly in a nice position now coming out of the final corner. When you see what the pace difference is like between the BMW and the Porsche, coming down towards turn number 1, downhill all the way here, much more than what the camera shows. And now into turn number 1. Seems like he wasn't quite close enough, so he needs to really push on the brakes into that final chicane to get a bit of a better run. But it's not all about the overtaking on track. There is obviously some strategy options. They will have to do at least 2 pit stops on fuel to get to the end. And I'm sure the teams will play around a little bit with the tyre choice as well. But obviously, a driver swap is to come for each team as well.
Yeah, that core team car is desperate to overtake the Speedy Mike car, isn't it? It's sort of throwing itself offline, and that's going to bring the Pro Simtech car in 13th place into play. So instead of charging for 10th, core could be down into 12th, so they need to be a little bit careful.
And we've got another 4-way battle here forming with even Joy Racing trying to get on the back of that one as well. So it's a fairly nice situation here to have all these different cars fighting, and as you can see, there's a few different manufacturers there as well. And now Plever's flashing a little bit just to remind him, hey, I'm still here. I'm not quite close enough, but I'm still here, trying to put the teammate off. As always, a Seawolf there, trying to, I think, go down the inside of Trident Donut Automotive, but couldn't quite get close enough. And this was Rob Moore still trying to recover a bit from that spin earlier on in the race. And it seems that he certainly isn't completely off the pace because he is fighting with these guys. Now we jump back to Plever. Can he get the slipstream into 130R? This is going to be a big risky move up the inside. He hasn't quite got so much of an overlap, so he's going to back out of that one. And that could leave him now vulnerable to Pro Simtech coming into the final chicane. Now Pro Simtech looking down the inside. Are they going to hold it? Oh, they're going to actually give each other plenty of space there, but that's going to completely ruin the exit. And this could be a good opportunity for now the Reverse Satellite Racing team to get involved as we get the slipstream now down towards the first corner. Is that Bentley going to have enough slipstream, enough top speed to get down the inside? It's going to be a bit of a late move, although he's going to get himself alongside. Now who's latest on the brakes? It looks like Pro Simtech around the outside are going to keep that position, but these guys are certainly starting to battle as we're getting towards 20 minutes done in this race.
Yeah, all kicking off in the first 20 minutes here. It's almost feeling like the remaining sort of 5 or 10 laps of a sprint race, but still, barely 30 minutes into the race, and we've got some great battles going on, and nice respectful racing as well. Nobody's bumping each other off, nobody's trying to force the way through into a gap that barely exists, and hopefully we'll be able to see this for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, these guys are working at quite a high intensity at the moment, so we need to see if that can continue. And that battling is actually just split up this 5-way battle. We've now got really a 2- and a 3-way battle. There's another one of the Speedy Mice there in 15th place trying to get on the back of them as well. We need to see how this one works out. The guys obviously pushing very hard to try and get themselves in a good position, and they're not looking too bad, about 25 seconds off the pace so far. So let's have a look at Delgado. Has he had another issue coming into turn number 1? Is he going to be another driver? Yeah, just touches that curb. Can he save it? Can he save it? Oh, just about. Good save there. Yeah, good save. Didn't go for a... But those left-hand tyres will certainly be screaming a little bit from all that sliding.
Oh, F. That net race car, I think, has just copped a whack in the front left tyre. Oh, yep, that thing is damaged. Yeah, that's going to have some hefty suspension damage on, so he's going to... Luckily, he's in the sort of final few corners of the track, so should be able to bring that into the...
The damage is not what you want to get, because the damage pairs are fairly long there. I mean, they're at a point where you really ruin your chances of getting good points, especially if you're one of the only cars to have issues like that. You can easily go, 1 or 2 laps down, or at least lose best part of a lap. So that is not what you want to do, because gaining that time back on track on pure pace is very, very, very difficult. So unfortunately, that is going to be going the way of them. But now we're going to see Plever. Is he going to get up the inside of Dunlop? Not quite. But it's an interesting location to look at, because you can really get another driver offline and try and work your way up to get some momentum towards the hairpin, which is going to be the next best overtaking opportunity. And but he goes a little bit deeper into Degner 2. Fortunately, it's very cambered in, really allows you to get the car into that corner. Now into the hairpin, he's not quite close enough to make an overtake, but someone who might be very soon as well is also Christian Michel getting on the back of his teammate.
Seem to catch up on the braking into the hairpin as we cut back to McDuff and Michel coming up to 130R here. Nita Velux keeping the pace. There's about a second between Michel and Michi Hoyer in third, who we're on board with now as he goes through the chicane. So he's cutting it nice and fine. The suspension set up perfectly to allow him to do that. And you can just see Michi Hoyer just holding station there in third place. He's got a bit of a gap to the Go Team car in behind him, and you assume in this early half an hour or so that they're just trying to cruise their way to the title and then have themselves some fun at Spa as McDuff goes a bit too deep into turn one.
That's going to get his teammate interested as well, seeing maybe a bit of the the pressure and the emotions getting to McDuff. We'll have to see how this one develops, but Christian Michel then pushing on his teammate. It doesn't look like there's any sort of team orders per se. I mean, they're not battling as such, but they certainly have that number 30 pushing onto the number 60. But I assume that's also to defend a little bit from Michi Hoyer, but also Go Team Racing, who are staying in there. Evolution have dropped off a little bit, but Go Team Racing is still in this fight for the lead, really. He's only a couple of seconds off the lead. And McDuff then once again going quite wide there in Degner 2. So maybe this is a bit of a sign that Michel is going to be coming for his teammate.
Yeah, McDuff managed to immediately pull 2/10 back after getting after that little wiggle at turn one. So he's definitely still got the pace, but I think he's just letting those mistakes creep in. May have lost his concentration a tiny bit. Hopefully he doesn't bin it, and if they keep this up, 1-2, but still way too early to talk about that kind of thing. Seems to be nice and okay through Spoon, a little bit wide of the apex, but not too bad. And then power down the hill to the crossover.
And that crossover is the most sort of famous part of this track, really, as you see here. They just go over a bit of a bridge there. Well, obviously this is a figure of 8 track, which is pretty much one of the only figure of 8 tracks that there are in the world, and especially at least on the world stage where we go all the main tracks. It makes it quite an interesting, quite unique track for that regard, and obviously it's one that's the drivers look forward to when they get here. And now Christian Michel is within 4/10 of his teammate, but he's not quite close enough just yet to at least look for an overtake. Once again, we don't know. The number 60 is going to be, or is ahead in the championship, so we don't know if there's any sort of team, not necessarily team orders, but just naturally they might put a little bit more preference on the number 60 being in front, especially with the way that with the championship, that car is sort of realistically in a chance of getting second in the championship. They're only 20 points off Evolution Motorsports in second in the championship. They've still got 2 races to be able to do that, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be trying to do that between themselves.
And McDuff cutting Degner 1 immensely, and there's the shot of the famous crossover here at Suzuka. I think aside from the Top Gear test track, I think those are the only 2 figure of 8 tracks in the world now that Oran Park has since been demolished in Australia. So you're effectively going clockwise and anti-clockwise on the same lap. So it definitely attacks the tyres. I think it was initially set up as a test track for Toyota that became part of the Formula 1 calendar. So it's definitely unique, and part of the reason the drivers love it. I think McDuff has another slide. You'd think if that keeps on happening, Nita Velux will say, let Michel through, because Michi Hoyer will start seeing that and wanting to get involved in the action.
Yeah, he certainly will. Now set another mistake, which, it's only these little mistakes, but that is always what gets the car behind a little bit interesting. It seems to once again be a little bit wiggly again through 130R. And this could maybe alter their run plans. We have to do a driver swap at some point in the race as per the rules. And obviously with it being 3 hours, with the fuel tank lasting pretty much 1 hour, one driver will do 2 hours and the other will do 1. So either you change at the first pit stop or second. So maybe if Rowan McDuff is not quite feeling it at the end of the first hour, they'll do a driver swap then. Who knows? We'll have to see what strategy they have. And also how that one works out, because if even making a couple of mistakes here and there, if he can hold the lead, we've seen, obviously, overtaking isn't happening every single lap. If he can still hold that, then look at this shot, and that might be a good omen for him to keep on there, to keep that track position. You can see there just how wide he was compared to his teammate in that 720S McLaren. And they're coming through Degner 1 and 2, using loads of that curb there, but keeping it on the black stuff at least for this lap.
Yeah, it's almost like he's overdriving the car, really, but it just needs to calm down and don't take any more out of the tyres than he otherwise would be doing, as he accidentally knocks his lights off. I know he was driving around at Bathurst with the lights off for a bit and was told to turn them back on as the yellow flags come out in sector 1. Rob Moore's in the pit lane. So, don't know if that's a scheduled stop or not, but he's really not having a good time out there at the minute.
Yeah, I'd say that's a bit early, because as we mentioned, the fuel goes about an hour, but in reality you can do just a bit over an hour, but not an hour and 15 minutes, let's say, for 2 stints to get here to the end. So this is a little bit off the strategy, I would say. But who knows, maybe they've got a bit of... once again, Roy McDuff goes wide, and he's actually going to let his teammate through. He's realised there. I wonder, they probably are talking to each other, or at least have engineers talking to each other, and they would know the situation. But now, is McDuff going to drop like a stone? Will the other 2 drivers come past him? And the awkward bit here, actually, is Rob Moore's coming out for this 4-way train for the lead. Hopefully he sees the blue flags and manages to get out of the way for all 4 of them, because that could be very awkward indeed. But now the eyes are really on McDuff to see, is he going to carry on, or is he going to now have a reset and try and get back to the front?
Mitchell is going to be loving this, even though he's probably not going to try and fight for the win and just play the numbers game. This is core team being chased by Caspian Motorsport through the 130R up towards the chicane once again. A bit too far back to try anything, but still that BMW will know that the car in behind exists. Those lights will be lighting up the inside of the mirrors, even though it looks like that McLaren doesn't have any lights. They are very small.
Yeah, they're a lot more slitty. You can see from that BMW they got the big headlights, and also they got what we call the endurance lights down in the bumper as well. Yeah, McLaren being a little bit more subdued, but you can sort of see it there. When you've got like 3 cars in a row, the track is just lit up so much more with all the headlights. As we now jump to this battle between Speedy Mike Pro Sim Tech and Joy Racing. So once again, 3 different manufacturers here for these 3 positions. With Speedy Mike choosing the Porsche this season, but Joy Racing there are enjoying the Bentley a little bit more since the recent BOP update. They are getting, they've got a little bit more performance compared to what the car was like earlier on in the season, and that, I believe, for Joy is the older Bentley, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So there's obviously two different Bentleys, 2 different Audis in R-Factor 2, but they have a slightly different physics, and they are BOP'd on their own. But now Pro Sim Tech, right in the slipstream of Speedy Mike, already pulling out actually only about a third of the way down the straight, so that's actually going to harm his run a little bit, because he was almost too close to get some proper slipstream, so he might not get the overlap into 130R, so he's going to have to back out of that one. And that's where you really have to judge the slipstream a little bit. If you're too close, you don't actually get that pull and that effect to make the overspeed. So once you pull out the slipstream, you basically just sit there. You need to be a few tenths behind just to make sure you get that overspeed by the time you get there. So for number 11 now, he's going to have to get back in the slipstream once again. But I think having to slow down through 130R is going to hinder him a little bit as we come towards turn 1.
Yeah, 130R isn't exactly a corner I'd be wanting to overtake, but these drivers are much better than I am. It's a tricky one. Do you try and throw it up the inside, which is obviously quite dangerous to do, as the yellows come out again in sector 3. I think that's the Flying Goat dropping back down the order. But it's either throw it in or try and scare the other guy so he goes wide, and then you just take the line through up towards the chicane. So there's a little bit of mental aggression there as well, as opposed to physically putting your car down the inside.
You've seen Gasper Zupan in the last minutes had a couple of off tracks, maybe having a couple of incidents there down in where are they now? I can't quite see exactly, but down to 20th position there now, having a few issues for Triandona Automotive, and we see here with the Porsche. Seems like he's is he on his own there. Oh yeah, just goes a little bit wide. Massive spin there. Does he hit the wall? Oh, yes, he
just
does
a
hit
bit.
the wall. That's a huge impact. How is he still
that moving?
Wing? Oh, he's very lucky there.
How has it still got its wheels?
He is.
Oh, nice grabbing.
He no wonder he had a couple of off tracks for that one. Jeez. So that's going to be a long run. You see there on the top left-hand corner of the screen, you got the numbers counting up, and I'm sure that will go for a good couple of minutes there. That's going to be a lot of damage that car is going to have to repair there. And as always with R-Factor, you don't always get a 100% car when you come back out. Sometimes there's a little bit of aero damage or something like that can't quite be fixed, though the car may not be perfect even once it comes out. So that's going to need some concentration in driving that. And now ProSim Tech once again coming up towards Speedy Mike, but not quite close enough to make an overtake. So it'll be probably ruin him backing out for that move in 130 a couple of laps ago, because it seems that that's his best opportunity so far.
That way, the Speedy Mike car sort of gone into Rory McDuff mode. It seems to be a bit tail happy and twitchy. It's almost like he's trying to turn the car with the throttle. That's just going to nuke the rear tyres and make it easier for ProSim Tech to get closer to the back of him. But still, this track very difficult to overtake at, so ProSim Tech are going to have to pick their moves and pick their moves wisely.
Oh, big side there. And one of the
with the handbrake on.
Yeah, one of the interesting points for the Porsche really is the fact that it is obviously literally rear engine. It's behind the rear wheels, technically. So once you get that rear moving, all the weight comes out, and that makes it a little bit harder. Obviously, much compared to the two cars behind him, like the BMW and the Bentley, which are obviously front-engined. So that's a completely different weight balance, weight distribution, and therefore the cars are obviously handling a lot more differently. But the cars all have the same physical tyre, therefore they work the tyres differently and that sort of stuff.
He's doing this again.
That is going to be quite an interesting point. But once again, ProSim Tech get too close coming out of Spoon. Then they're not actually getting any slipstream here. So is he going to dive it once again up into 130R? Is he going to just back out of it? He's going to have to back out of it. But Sansano's really sliding that Porsche there. And now Joy Racing coming around the outside. That could be a good opportunity to go around the outside of the chicane. But he's going to have to really commit to that, get to there to the second apex. And he's made that stick with Ellis driving that car. And he's got that car up into 12th place. Awesome move there around the outside of the chicane. And as long as he can defend, hasn't got so bad of an exit down the out of the final corner, then he will be able to defend that one into turn one as well. So really good move there by Ellis in the Joy Racing team.
Yeah, Beta Bello got a little bit of a twitch on in between the two sections of the chicane, which made Jeffrey Ellis's job a little bit easier. It's another stunning cinematic shot from broadcast director Ruben Correa Alves. Seeing all the lights go round and all the lights on the Ferris wheel in the background there. Looking absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's great. It's certainly a spectacular track, and getting these really far out shots as well, you can just see how big the track is. It's a very long track, very wide track, so it really covers a lot of distance in that regard. And now Ellis all over the back of Sansano now for 11th position. So Joy Racing making up some positions once again. Obviously he had a bit of an incident earlier with Pedro Delgado forcing no Chatham, so maybe he's potentially getting a penalty depending on how the protest works with that, whether it happens or not. But Jeffrey getting close to Sansano, who once again goes really wide. And now Ellis, is he going to come up with the same issue of being a little bit too close? No, he's not actually. He's going to be in a good distance for the slipstream up towards 130R, but you really have to commit to it. You really have to get yourself to the inside of the car ahead if you want to be making a move there. So it's better generally just to set yourself up to be really close in the chicane. And in the chicane, if you get a good exit, then you know you're going to be getting yourself in a good position for turn number 1. We saw him be good on the brakes last lap, and then he's hopefully going to be good on the brakes there once again. As we jump to Russo now, who is doing a very good performance for Go Team Racing. Starting the car, I assume it is Georgi Nadev in the car with him later as well, another very fast driver. So these guys are in a good position, currently all over the back of championship leader and potential championship winning team today, Burst Esports. So that is a very good run for them. But Mitchie's just dropped off a little bit from the 2 Nita Velocers.
Yeah, Christian Michel's got a gap of nearly 2 seconds to Rory McDuff, who in turn has about 2 and a bit to Michi Hoyer in third, who, like we say, probably just cruising to grab the points necessary to win the championship here tonight. Still don't take anything away from Go Team Racing. Luigi Russo being able to keep up with Burst Esports, who are pretty much one of the top teams in R Factor 2.
Yeah, especially on the GG side of it as well. They've been so good during the GT Pro Series, also GT Challenge as well. I mentioned Michi Hoyer getting the victory there. And over the 3 seasons that we had now, obviously season 3 is continuing at the moment. They've obviously had different cars there, but they've always been towards the top. Not necessarily always challenging for race victories, but they've always been there. They've always been good, and obviously on the Formula side of things, as well on the open wheel side of things, they've been very good in those championships as well. Also in all of the race all-star races last season as well, or this time last year I should say. They obviously were good there. So over the last couple of years, they've really been getting towards the front and trying to establish themselves against the obviously the names that were already established. And I think they've done a very good job of that, because it's not easy to jump into these higher level competitions and just go straight to the front. But Burst has certainly done that and got some good drivers involved.
Nice cinematic shot of the hairpin. See anybody come flying through here? Nope. Okay. Gaspar Zuban, after that little bit of contact with the wall at 130R, he's retired the car, so no more racing for Troy and Donut Automotive here tonight. See Tom Kubik going for a spin through Degner 2. And that's going to be a long wait if he has to. I know it's the Flying Goat, so it's near the back of the grid anyway, so he can just rejoin and get back on with it.
Yeah, that's as we now see Ellis getting very close up towards a Dunlop curve, but once again, very difficult place to actually physically overtake. But this is somewhere where you can force your opponent into a mistake. And that is coming to Degner 1. Is he gonna force Sensano? No, Sensano's going to defend nicely there. Have a nice exit as well out of Degner 2. Ellis, we know, likes to send into this corner, so is he going to do it again? As he did a few laps ago, he's going to think about it. He's going to brake late, but not quite close enough to make an overtake there. But he's certainly thinking about it. And Sassano is doing a good job to hold on to this P11. But he has dropped now 10 seconds to the core team racing. And Russo somewhere has got ahead of Michi Hoyer. Michi Hoyer is having an issue or two. He's now down into 5th place. Has Michi Hoyer had a crash? That is what we need to have a look. Or has he just had a bit of a mistake somewhere?
No, he's still going just fine, so I think he may have had a bit of a moment at 130R or something like that. So he's in behind Leon Bock for Evolution Motorsport, but if your maths is correct, Burst just needs to finish in the top 10, so still on course, but that won't do Mitchie's confidence any good.
Yeah, so about a minute ago, he did have an off track. So here we go. Russo coming up towards 130R now. Michi Hoyer, he's going to go wide all on his own. Does he go for a spin? Yes, he does. Is he going to be able to save this, or can he? I think he didn't hit the wall.
He didn't.
I think he didn't hit the wall there. That is a very, very good save.
It's the thickness of a cigarette paper between the rear wing and the wall, so Burst have got away with that one.
Yeah, there's me just saying that they've done so well to get towards the front over the last year or so. But yes, that is not what they want to do, especially on a day where they can win the championship. And obviously, anytime you can win the championship one race or even two, in some situations before the end of the season, that is always going to be a very good help. They were just a little bit short in Bathurst, but they got a very, very good opportunity here. They basically need Evolution Motorsports to win the race, effectively, to have any sort of opportunity of really coming back at that 80-point deficit that they have. So they basically just don't need to lose 30 points to Evolution. And let's see, how close did Mitchie get? Is he going to be just about a cigarettes paper? As you say, that is going to be very close indeed.
It's a magazine.
Or even on the rear end as well. That is poor. Very lucky. Well, so it's a little bit of skill, but also quite a bit of luck there from Mitchie Hoyer. But they do continue, and fortunately with no damage as well. So that gives them perfect opportunity to come back from this. As I mentioned, I believe Jonas Simičić will be getting in that car as well, who is obviously arguably a tiny bit quicker than Mitchie Hoyer, at least from what we saw in GT3 Endurance so far.
Another wiggle for the Corvette though there.
Yeah, it could be a good opportunity for them to come back, but they do need to overtake a couple of cars. But let's see, as soon as it's going to be another replay. Yeah, just turned a little bit too much. The rear gave up, and then fortunately, he actually went to reverse there, trying to keep the car in a straight line, but managed to save that just about. But unfortunately for him, Evolution got past as well. So a bit of a dodgy situation, and he's now got to defend from the Wanako team as well.
Yeah, Nico Barclay behind the wheel of that BMW. Quite a large machine compared to the Corvette. Still Mitchie has about half a second in hand, so no risk of any dive bombs into the hairpin or anywhere else where there's a braking zone. Is that lap traffic moving over? Yes, that is. That'll be Rob Moore just getting out of the way of the faster guys there, and the battle resumes.
And Wanako got Nico Barclay in the car, and he and Borja Milan, who've been in that car so far this season, they've been very, very quick, but they've had just a few issues here and there. They've had a few internet issues with Nico Barclay as well. Those who don't know, Nico Barclay's over in Peru, which is obviously quite far west of most of the sort of European-based drivers and the servers that we race on as well. So he's had a couple of connection issues here and there, so that's obviously hindered them. But in the races that they have managed to stay in the race, they've generally had quite good results. Just unfortunate for them that there's been so many races where there's been a few issues. Even back in I think it was the second race of the season, they had some issues. They managed to get back into quite a good position as well. So they've certainly got the pace, as they're showing here once again, being up into 6th place and challenging the championship leaders. But certainly some luck and a bit of internet connection is certainly what they want. But now Ellis Sansano really wiggling the rear end of that car. Comes into the pit lane already. That is very early for him to come into the pit lane. And that's going to leave Ellis a little bit vulnerable to Beto Bayo coming down towards the first corner. Now that he doesn't have any sort of slipstream, but it looks like he's going to be able to hold on to that one just about. Well, that is a very early pit stop from Sansano. And I'm a little bit surprised by that, because if he's struggling already after 45 minutes, then there's no way he's going to be doing 2 more stints to the end, which will be well over an hour. And maybe this could be a 3-stop race for that team. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, not seeing any driver changes yet. I think that will click across at the end of the stop if and when it happens. But Jeffrey Ellis up to 11th, having started 15th, so slowly making his way up. And then ahead of him, he's got Alice Pleva, who's 10 seconds up the road, or 11 seconds up the road. But now Beto Bello and Matthew Fennell for Speedy Might in behind, so we could have another 3-way fight on our hands in the next few laps.
Yeah, one that we got here now is this 4-5-6 battle, and it's this is quite an important one as well, because Evolution are the ones that Burst really need to worry about, because Go Team Racing being that extra 5 points behind makes that a little bit more difficult. the Burst really need to only worry if Evolution are going to be sort of winning or being second in this race. Therefore, they don't have to. Then they need to basically just make sure they get to over half distance, where they will get classified. So that is really the minimum for Burst this race. I'm sure that Hoyer doesn't want to have a repeat of what he just did. But yeah, these guys obviously direct fight in the championship and now direct fight on the track. Also with Wanako getting involved. And Wanako, they're quite far down in the championship. They're 24th. Despite all of their speed and everything, they've just been that unlucky and had that many issues that they're down in 24th place. So they've got absolutely nothing to lose, really. So they're going to be going for these positions. So it's quite an awkward situation for Hoyer to be in.
Yeah, if this was the Virtual Endurance Championship, that would be Burst Evolution Motorsports. So they've got a little bit of a technical partnership going on, but here they're two separate teams, so Evolution and Burst. Like I said, two separate teams, so they won't be working together this time round. So it'll be a straight fight between Michi Hoyer and Leon Bock ahead. Still Nico Barclay, the Peruvian, trying to really catch up to the back of that Corvette, whose tyres are probably not holding onto the track as they might have done about 10 or 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's one interesting thing with these GT3 cars is that the tyres can physically, I mean, even do, especially at tracks such as Le Mans, where there's lots of straights, they can even do, 2, sometimes 3 stints on a set of tyres, but they just lose so much pace in that second stint that it's a really difficult situation to be driving like that, because they physically do it. It's not like they just fall off a cliff, but they are just so much slower, and that is something that we always see when we get towards the end of the stints, that you often see the lap times just really, really slow down. For instance, even on the live timing, if you're following the lap times that they're doing, they just slow down so much. But then you see, for instance, with Sansano, the car that just starts wiggling around. It gets very awkward when you got towards the end of these stints, and especially in these 3-hour races where you're almost forced to do pretty much a full tank each stint. You don't really have much choice but to almost change every stint. So I wouldn't be surprised if most teams do 3 single stints. However, someone may try and do a double stint, but do watch out for them being pretty slow on that double.
Yeah, especially through this first sector where the tyre load is pretty high. But Christian Michel out in the lead. His last lap was a 2-minute dead. Michi Hoyer's last lap was 2:01. So he's definitely lost quite a bit of performance from that spin. And the car ahead of Nico Bartley that we're just on board with. Just going through Degner 2 up towards the hairpin. This lap looking a bit more under control from Michi Hoyer. With probably about 9.5 minutes until they start making their first pit stops.
Yeah, I assume most of the teams will be trying to get to that hour mark. It breaks up the race pretty well, but anything that you can do over an hour is good, because that will always just shorten your final pit stop. And obviously, the less time you spend on the pit lane, or in the pit lane, I should say, then the less time you're going to lose compared to your competitors. So if you can, especially in these situations where you've got a bit of slipstream, and you know you're going to sit there for a lap or two, if you can save just a little bit of fuel, then that can always add up as we get towards the later points in the race. But it looks like Leon Bock now, who is, in his own right, a very fast driver. Seems he's just maybe holding up Hoyer just a little bit, as he has dropped off about 5 seconds towards the Go Team Racing up ahead. So he's not quite in that fight for that third position. So it looks like Hoyer's just getting a little bit closer. And maybe when we get towards that pit stop in about 4 or 5 laps time, they will be looking at doing something to try, Burst at least will be trying to get ahead in that phase as well. So I think if Mitch Hoyer gets ahead of Leon Bock, then he can probably start pulling away just a little bit.
Some pretty impressive consistency as well from Christian Michel up in front. He's done a 2-minute point 6, 2-minute dead, 2-minute point 3, 2-minute point 2, a 1:59.9, a 2-minute 3, 2-minute 3, 2-minute 3 in the last 10 laps or so. So getting nice and comfortable with the gap. About 3 seconds to Roy McDuff in second, who seems to have got the car back where he wants it and pulling away from Luigi Russo in third.
Yeah, I think that spin from Hoyer as well also helps that situation a little bit, sort of put the immediate pressure off McDuff, so he was able to sort of regroup. He still has dropped 3 seconds to his teammate, but obviously each driver is different, and therefore they can have some differences in their speed and their consistency here and there. And consistency, especially in endurance racing, is really the important bit, because you might be like, think, oh yeah, I'm only 0.2 of a second slower. But if you do 0.2 of a second over like 100 laps, then that starts adding up quite a lot of time over the course of the race. So that is quite an important factor. At the moment, he's only dropped about 3 or 4 seconds, so it's not too bad. Still within a shout, but it's going to be quite difficult for him, especially as you see here with Michi Hoyer, not really making any progress since that spin. So he's just letting the Nita Velexes having a pretty comfortable run out the front and looking in a good position so far.
This is Ryan Nash for Revo Satellite Racing. What happens here? Bentley through the final chicane. Does he drop? Oh, hits the sausage curb and goes for a bit of a spinneroonie. Well, a half spinneroonie. And I think he thought that those bollards moved. And that thing is beached.
Can you get it out? Not a cliffhanger. I wanted to see. Okay, no, I managed to get it out. Yeah, those they're not like foam blocks. They're more like concrete blocks. So unfortunately, got stuck in there, and he probably would have had some damage from that as well. So yeah, not the ideal situation for Revo. As I see in 22nd place. Trojan Donut Automotive has retired from the race, so we are now down to 21 drivers. A bit unfortunate to see that, because obviously we want to have all the drivers getting towards the end of the race, so that is a bit unfortunate for them. But missed that. It was a little while ago now, but just missed. Zupan had a DNF there, and obviously they had a bit of a big moment earlier, so that probably led to that as well, but a bit unfortunate for them as we are watching. Volante Racing up in 9th place. But they've dropped, so when De Croo got past him, he's obviously pulled away about 7 seconds now. So Donut Prodan not quite on the pace of that, but obviously that Aston is not the best with the BOP either. So 9th place fairly decent. But here, Ryan Nash. It's going to be a 50-point turn.
It's a bit Austin Powers, isn't it? And
fortunately, he was close enough to the entry that with that damage, he didn't really lose any more time driving. But I'm sure he's going to be maybe a little bit embarrassed with that one. But I mean, it's not exactly the thing that you test, is it, driving through those blocks? It
would have been gutting if he almost did it. He was beached on the one behind him, and then he almost got beached on the one in front of him. But he's going. He's down in 21st and last, but that's better than not being in the race at all.
Exactly, and if I'm not mistaken, it's 50% of the race distance. So if you complete, you get points as well. You're classified. So that is obviously 1 hour and 30 minutes. So we're coming up to that in just over 30 minutes' time, and that'll be the point where they obviously can confirm that they're going to get points. This was quite an interesting factor back when I raced in the Virtual Endurance Championship in season 11, I think it was. Coming into the final race of the season, we had a battle with a team for the championship for Le Mans, final race, 24 hours Le Mans, and then they DNF'd after about 10 or 11 hours, so they didn't actually make it to the 50%, so they weren't going to get any points in the race. So basically we won by default, because obviously whatever happened to them, they weren't going to be getting points. So it's quite an important factor to be getting to that 50%. It can be a little bit challenging sometimes if you're having a really bad first couple of hours in the race, and it is a bit difficult to keep going, but that is obviously where you get the points. Well, and points are prizes.
Yeah, I think something similar happened to Speedy Mite a couple of years ago when they were in the P3s at Le Mans, and they basically had to just finish because the P3 field was so small, everybody got points and they just had to finish. And while we were talking about the fact that they just had to finish, we saw one of them go backwards into the wall just before Tetra Rouge, and that was, they lost the championship that way. So it can be absolutely heartbreaking when that kind of thing happens. Although Sean's probably getting PTSD talking about that now.
Yeah, the LMP3 was certainly a fun factor to have. It's quite an interesting car. Obviously, adding the multi-class factor to it as well. But yeah, obviously this season went to more of a GT, like the GT World Challenge series, where you obviously have GT race 3-hour races, and certainly been an interesting factor to change to the support series for the VEC. That's obviously the main series. So if you want to get involved, then do check out the SimRacing.Club forums, where you need to go through the academy first, and then once you go through the academy, you get your license, you are then able to sign up for this, the GT3 Endurance, but also the VEC as well, when the sign-ups are available and open for those series. So that's something to look out for over the course of the next few months, because obviously we've only got 1 or 2 races left in both this and the VEC, and when we get to that, it will be about this summer and the build up to the starts of the new seasons into sort of August, September time, at least in previous seasons as well. As we jump back to Christian Michel, who's still about 3 seconds ahead of his teammate as we come to the 2-hour mark on this lap. So we're coming to finish the first hour of racing, and I would assume that pit stops are going to start coming in the next couple of laps.
Yeah, just looking at the gap between Rory McDuff in second. Oh, here we go. Here's the current standing. So Christian Michel out in the lead, followed by Rory McDuff in the second. Citrus, Nita Velox car. Luigi Russo having a great performance with Go Team Racing. Had a bit of a fortunate moment with Michi Hoyer having his spin, but he's in turn followed by Leon Bott for Evolution Motorsport, and then Michi Hoyer in 5th. Remember that Burst Esports basically just have to finish in the top 10. Maths pending to take the title here tonight. And then Nika Barkley for Monaco in 6th, having a great day there. Andre Muscala of Scuderia Muscala in 7th. Matthew De Crop recovering after an early spin there in 8th. Donut Prodan for Volante in 9th, and then Alice Blever for Core Team rounding out the top 10.
And coming on to this second page there, we've got Joy Racing up in 11th. I think that's an eventful first part of the race so far, having obviously a bit of contact in the hairpin with Delgado, and also a good battle with ProSim Tech and Sansano as well. See Sansano dropping down, so he must have already made his pit stop. And then in 17th place there, you got Snow Shatton with Pedro Delgado, he himself had a couple of spins and things in this first hour of racing at the 3 hours of Suzuka, so still 2 hours to go of this race. This is obviously the penultimate race of the season as well, so this is where, in terms of the championship, this is where teams are going to start to finally try and work out where they can finish and what their potentials are. But there are still 50 points for a win, so technically there's still 100 points available, maximum, for any of these teams to get. Obviously, easier said than done to get the points, those 50 points for a win, but it is certainly possible there. So let's see now what they can do in the final 2 hours here in Suzuka. And we are jumping on board with Prodan, who's still in this battle as he goes a little bit wide there. So Pleva is going to get a nice easy position there up into 8th place as Christian Michel comes into the pit lane 1 lap ahead of his teammate. It seems like Rory McDuff has stayed out, so difference in strategy between the two Nita Velox guys.
Yeah, Rory's going to need a decent in-lap here. And he's got 10 seconds to go team in behind. Okay, so he must have pulled out a really nifty gap in that one. I'm just trying to work out how that's happened. Because that gap wasn't 10 seconds before.
I'm sure if an incident has happened, we'll get a nice replay from Ruben. But obviously being in endurance races, things can always happen off camera. And we'll see if we can find out yeah, what's going on there? But yeah, actually, I see Russo did have an off track. That might be part of the issue or the reason, I should say, as well. Christian Michel comes out with, from what I can see, a pit stop time of 48 seconds. So I think that is also including a tyre change, because that is going to be obviously quite important if someone does decide to stay out on the SimSet tyres, because the tyres, as we mentioned, do really drop off. On certain tracks, it does allow it. So I'm just coming to double check on the replay. But yeah, we'll have to see if his teammate responds on the next lap.
So here's Rory McDuff. He's going around again.
That is interesting. Very interesting indeed, because he wasn't really close enough to be getting that slipstream. So, yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, just double check. Yeah, Christian Michel obviously did change tyres. And here is Russo getting a little bit wrong into turn number one.
Okay.
Does he hit the wall? Oh, does he hit the wall yet? Oh, badly.
Just a bit.
He's going to have some damage from that for sure. And that is a bit of an unfortunate situation for them, because they're in such good position. They still are. Still 5 seconds ahead of Burst Esport. But now it is Evolution Motorsports coming in. And it seems some of these drivers are staying out a little bit, so they're trying to go as deep as they can to try and, as we said, make that last pit stop a little bit shorter, and therefore simply just spend less time in the pit lane on that stint. So here's Russo, and he actually snapped way before the normal point there, so he just rear tyres gave up a little bit, going in a tiny bit too hot. Unfortunately, that is going to be some damage for him, because if he has to repair that as well, he's just going to lose time in the pit lane. But if he stays out with the damage, then he's just going to lose time on the track as well. So it's sort of pick your poison.
How that thing's still driving in a straight line, I do not know. Because anybody else, that thing would be driving at 45 degrees.
I do not have your answer. Unfortunately, I do
and
not know.
And why
either.
not?
Yeah, I don't know either. He's a little bit lucky to be continuing at least with a half decent pace with that. We'll have to see whether he stays out or not. And then when he comes into the pit lane, again, we'll have to see if he can repair that or not. Now we'll see Rory McDuff. Is he going to come in? This would be 2 extra laps, so it's going to be 3 extra laps now for Rory McDuff. Really trying to stretch this out. Interesting that it's so different from his teammate, because you would think teammates probably similar setup, similar driving style. But either way, Russo coming in now as well. Mitchell stays out once again, so we're going well past the hour mark now, coming up for about 3 laps extra than the likes of Christian Michel, who pitted straight away.
I'm going to watch Russo just to see how long he is in the pit lane for. See if he takes that damage repair.
I wouldn't be surprised if he is going to be coming in coming in for repairs, I mean, because he's surely got to have that was a decent hit on the wall. I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be spending a little bit of extra time, because that is not what not what you want to be doing. As we see Leon Bock now getting stuck behind a little bit of lap traffic, that's not going to be the best in his battle with Nietzsche Hoyer. But Christian Michel, who stayed out, has done a 58.5 new best lap time, and that is going to be a bit of an undercut. As we mentioned, the tyres really drop off. You can see the scratches there on Russo's car hitting the wall, and Garidoglu there getting a bit of a penalty as well. So
didn't take the damage.
So
must be all right.
Yeah, must be all right, because obviously you wouldn't choose to take it, and that leaves Leon Bock to get past him as well. So Leon Bock has got up there into that position, which I think, that'll be 3rd position overall once the pit stops work out. So Russo's lost a bit of time there, and this could give Michi Hoyer the opportunity as well to get back past. Though as we said, there is a bit of an undercut going on here because the tyres, always one speedy bike goes off in the background. The tyres drop off so much, you're about even up to 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap slower at the end of the stint. So if you then pit, let's say 4 laps earlier, then there's potential for even up to 8 seconds that you're losing just by staying out. But then you're going to have a shorter pit stop at the end, for instance. So lots of different strategies going on, as we see Caspian in, Wanako in, and also Rory McDuff there. So Mitchie Hoyer takes the lead here, and he's staying out once again. So quite an interesting strategy, and we'll have to see how it works out. And is pitting early going to be the best, or is saving a bit of fuel going to be the best?
Well, Mitchie Hoyer's been out there for 62 minutes plus the formation lap, so he wasn't charging through to try and take the lead in the first few minutes as Effie Keskin comes in. I'm sure that's part of a driver swap, so he's added on to what his teammates picked up. Going back to Mitchie Hoyer, probably saving enough fuel so that when it all does cycle round and he takes his tyres and his fuel at his pit stop, he should be in second or back into third when he comes back out.
Yeah, certainly quite a fascinating thing to watch here, because as I mentioned, if by staying out, you're going to be doing slow laps, but then obviously you do have less fuel as well, so that always helps just a little bit. But Mitchie Hoyer obviously trying to work something different here. He was stuck behind people pretty much the whole stint, so I'm sure he would have been able to save quite a lot in the slipstream, and that is obviously something that he would be planning, because as well, if he is staying out this long as well, I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually going to make the driver swap now and get his teammates in the car after having a slightly eventful first stint, not quite as good as he would have wanted, and he stays out once again as Jeffrey Ellis gets a penalty. So now we're coming to an hour and 10 minutes. Obviously the race did start a little bit after the 3 hours, but that formation lap fuel is included in their usage of this first tank as well. So this is certainly staying out quite a long time for the Corvette. I wasn't expecting someone to stay out this long as such, but they're obviously trying to make something work and trying to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, it means that their final stop will be much shorter because they've got less fuel to put in.
Well, yeah, certainly will, and that's obviously going to add up. We saw Christian Michel, full pit stop was 48 seconds. So even if you can save, even a quarter of a tank, that's still going to be, 12 seconds potentially in the pit lane. So that's going to be quite a big saving. And as I mentioned, getting 12 seconds on track on pure pace is very difficult. So if you can do it with a bit of strategy, then it's always going to help your teammate out.
Just having a look at Mitchie Hoyer's most recent lap times. High 2 minutes, and has been for some time, so consistent lap times. So definitely on a fuel saving run. Interested to see where this puts him back out again once. Well, here we go. It's all kicking off to Roman Brickreal and Anthony Maris as they come through the Degners. Mitchie Hoyer coming through 130R up towards the chicane, so we'll be able to see in a few seconds whether he takes to the pit lane. You'd think he would at this point. Trying to stay away from the sausage curves, Mitchie, happened at Zandvoort, and
interesting.
It's still going round.
Yeah, so I double checked. So the race started just after 2 hours 59 left. So we are now basically at an hour and almost an hour. Hour and 11 minutes for the race. Obviously, he's going to be another 2-minute lap, so it's going to be pretty much an hour and 13 minutes. It will be on a tank, obviously, plus the litre or 2 litres for the formation lap as well. So quite an interesting point to see them going this long and trying to make it work, as one move finally come in as well. And it seems that they are pretty much on the last or at least from the top part of the race, one of the last teams to come into the pit lane. So it seems that then Burst will be pretty much the last team to come into the pit lane. And that may suggest the reason why Hoyer wasn't really making any progress in that first stint. Because obviously, naturally saving fuel, you do go a little bit slower.
Yeah, he's got 39.5 seconds to Christian McCall. He's got a minute to Rory McDuff. So he will come out in...
McDuff? How did he lose that much time? That is interesting. I'm going to have a look at the
Mitchie will come out in just about third when he's pitted.
Interesting. So, yeah, so just having a look. So McDuff's time was 12 seconds. So his stop time was 12 seconds slower than his teammate, which is quite an interesting point. Now, as we said, Michel got a bit of an undercut as well for those few laps. So that's where the other sort of 12 seconds comes from, 24 seconds. So I wouldn't be surprised here if Hoyer as well is quite far behind. Considering Michel's pit stop was slower then, I definitely saw him do tyres, but maybe he only did 2 tyres. I'm not sure if that is possible. I'll just double check if that's possible in the rules, but maybe he only did 2 tyres, for instance, because to have 12 seconds slower is a bit interesting, because under fueling is not really something that teams do. So I will double check on that, but certainly a lot of strategy play going on here. So only 3 hours in the race, but certainly lots that you can do. And we are only 15 minutes before the halfway, and Michi Hoyer is already making, well, only now I should say, making his first pit stop. So that, in theory, could leave only about a 30-minute final pit or final stint if they want to push this one as well. So I wouldn't be surprised actually if Burst are now maybe doing something like under fueling to try and save a lot of time in the pit lane and get some time that way. We'll have to see how it works out, but they've dropped behind the 2 Nita Veluxes and he's still in the pit lane. So he's going to be
5-second stop.
Yes, that's probably a full pit stop then, but is he going to come out behind both Evolution and Wanako get past him? So he's hasn't lost too much time. Yeah, only Simichich now in the car, but staying out that long is certainly something interesting. How we'll have to see how that one develops as we get towards the next part of the race. But certainly interesting to stay out that long, as it's going to give you a very short pit stop at the end potentially. So Burst Esports could be playing a strategy blinder. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, bearing in mind that Michi lost 2 places with his spin, so that's put them on the back foot slightly, but with them being able to stay out that much longer than the 4 cars ahead of them, it would probably be a bad idea to bet against Burst Esports at this point, as Leon Bock and Nico Bartley are fighting for the final podium position as it stands. 2 BMWs running nose to tail here. Can Nico Bartley get a better exit out of the hairpin? He gets a decent one, but isn't right up on the diffuser of Leon Bock's BMW M6. You see the moon up there. Should be heading towards daylight towards the end of the race. You can see that the sky is starting to get a tiny bit lighter, but nothing to get excited about just yet. Still no forecast of rain, so we're going to be having a dry race all the way to the end. And these 2 playing a slipstream war up the hill, past the support pit lane, over the crossover towards 130R. If Nico Bartley can keep it close enough, just pulls out ever so slightly, keeps it nice and close through 130R. No aero wash, but still not close enough to send a move into the chicane. So it's going to be all about the exit, the chicane, and the run towards turn 1 here.
Well, Bog didn't get the absolute best exit, so I think this could be an opportunity for Nico Barkley. He's going to have to get the slipstream. As we see Caspin coming out of the pit lane, that could be quite an awkward situation with these 2 cars fighting. Unfortunately, they get past there, but Bock defends the inside. Nico Barkley on the outside. Ooh, we've seen what happens if you go on the outside there, so he's going to lose just a little bit. Just a tenth or so, not quite close enough, but now diving up the inside of turn 3, that is going to be a very bold move, so he's going to have to back out of that one to avoid a crash. But Nico's certainly a lot quicker at this point of the race actually than Leon Bock. Leon Bach heavily under pressure here. Nico Barkley coming back at him during this second stint that we're into now. And Barkley getting close once again. So it wasn't quite so fast during the first stint compared to Bach. So I do wonder if there's maybe a difference in the fuel strategy or something like that. For him to be so close, but it's always basically just bumping Bach there, coming through Degner 2 as well. So this is starting to get just a little bit feisty for this third place.
Well, Barkley pitted 2 laps after Bach, so those tyres are going to be in slightly better condition. But still putting the Evolution Motorsport driver under a lot of pressure here. But still, Leon Bach managing to keep it on the track, and that move we saw where he just showed his nose into that left-hander, maybe trying to get Bach to dive out the way, but Leon Bach said, no, I know that trick. I'm going to stay exactly where I am.
Now Barkley coming out onto the back straight. We saw him last time get a very good run through this sequence of corners, which gave him a good opportunity down to turn number 1, but he wasn't quite close enough to make an overtake, so he needs to be just a little bit closer, a little bit braver on the brakes coming into the chicane. And that'll put him in a good position to come into turn number 1. But it does seem actually overtaking into the chicane is probably just as good, if not better, of an opportunity, but certainly a lot more difficult.
He's
as
very
now.
close here.
Very close. Can he get down the inside though? Leon Bach is basically touching the pit wall, trying to not let the Peruvian driver get down the inside. So now Wanako's going to have to go round the outside. It's going to be a big and brave move. If he can hold it there, which he can, Leon Bach gives him the room. Can Nico Barkley keep it on the track? Yes, he can. Nice move there around the outside. That is one of the better moves that you'll see all day. And they do need to worry about Burst Esport coming back at them. But for now, Nico Barkley can go off into the distance, and that was a great move.
Yeah, 4 seconds between Bach and Yannick Simicic in 5th, so a little bit of a cushion. But Nita Velux, Christian Michel has a 23-second lead ahead of Rory McDuff. He has jumped him bigly in those pit stops.
Yeah, huge margin between those two drivers now. And as we see here, actually, one of them coming up to lap the Flying Goat, and also Roman Hickrell for Corteen. They're in 19th place. The Flying Goat, not quite last, but behind these two drivers is Omicron and then Satellite, who are now 3 laps down after that issue earlier on. So I believe that is. So yeah, not ideal for those for those drivers. So it's actually it's Caspian, sorry, not Satellite. So yeah, not ideal for those couple of drivers to be at the back, but at least there's a fight for these guys. At least a fight to be had, because it's not the best where you're sort of at the back and all on your own. So Flying Goat letting past there Nita Felix, and now is going to be focusing on pit crew, trying to not let them get that position up into 18th place.
Yeah, it's a similar battle to what we've seen between Wanaco and Evolution. Different cars though, but still trying to follow very closely into turn 1, not close enough to make a move. But Peripheral is going to be flooding the mirrors of Anthony Maris, not just with those headlights, but also with the sheer size of that BMW.
Yeah, it is a big boy. Everyone talks about the M8 GTE being big, but this M6 GT3 is also a big boy. Certainly fills up the mirrors of the car behind, especially that Mercedes, which is generally quite a low down car as well. So certainly you can really see the difference with I think it's the McLaren and also the Audi. They're really sort of low down cars, being that sort of supercar body shape compared to the M6, which is more of a saloon coupe. And here we see Christian Michel. He just lost the pit box a little bit, and then he went up on the front. So I don't know, maybe he only changed the front tyres. Unsure how he gained, because his pit stop was 12 seconds quicker despite missing that pit box.
Well. I think it goes up on the front and then goes up on the back instead of all 4 going up at the same time. So even still, he might still have only taken the front tyres.
I'm just going to see if that is if that is possible, because that's certainly interesting, because I don't know how else he would be able to save that time unless he underfueled, but I would be very surprised if he underfuels. Having said that, he is now 25 seconds ahead, so that's quite a long way towards an extra pit stop if he wanted to make one. But that would be certainly an interesting one if he does a 3-stop when Michi and Burst Esport were almost close to doing a 1-stop in some ways as well. So completely different strategies going on there, but it will all work its way. They're all doing a 3-hour race, so at some point it's all going to come back in the favour of one team or another, and that is going to be quite an interesting battle on the strategy wise, at least, to see between those teams. And it seems that Leon Bock has dropped off a little bit from Monaco and is now only a couple of seconds ahead of Yannis Simčić for Burst Esport as well now, so that battle is going to be coming back as we now have a driver swap for one move with Ferrari in the car ahead of behind Visluzel I should say, and obviously one move trying to get back up after having a little bit of an eventful first stint with a couple of issues here and there, while Core Team doing a decent job so far in 8th.
Yeah, Simčić has pretty much halved the gap between him and Leon Bock, so Simčić definitely getting a stomp on. Fresher tyres, considering that car came in way later than everybody else. It was the last car to do its first stop, so you'd expect Simčić to be chomping at that gap even more over the next few laps, so probably the next 5 laps or so we might see Simčić putting a move on Leon Bock into one of these corners.
Yeah, we know Simčić is not afraid of a bit of a send, but it's interesting to see there 42 seconds off the lead. That is remarkable, considering that we had that sort of 4-way battle for the lead at one stage in that first stint. That is, pretty interesting to see that, how strategies and everything have worked out. But 42 seconds is close enough to a pit stop, as all we've had the Flying Goat and Core Team having a bit of a thing down into the final chicane. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was Pickles doing a bit of a send, and Maris not quite ready for that one, so he's now going to have to come back for this one into turn number 1, but not quite close enough yet. But not too often that you see a car that far off the track as the Flying Goat was.
Yeah, the Flying Goat had to go right over those sausage curves, which caused a bit of a problem for another driver this evening. It'll be interesting to see a replay of that. I think that's what we're getting right here. So Prickreel coming up to the chicane. Oh, he's done full Senna 1989, and the Flying Goat has just gone whoa and taken avoiding action.
Yeah, there wasn't actually a contact. That was quite interesting. I thought it was going to be a big spin there or something, but Flying Goat just choosing to get out of the way and avoid the accident, which I guess is a safe thing to do. Obviously held on to that position, but Pickerel was doing a bit of an awkward lunge anyway, so nothing too bad about that. Here we go from the rear view. You see Pickerel doesn't really just get his nose there, but the Flying Goat is just like, oh yeah, nope, just going to drive over. Fortunately not having a bump over that anti-cut, as we saw one of the BMWs do earlier on as well. So he managed to go over them fairly nicely. And this battle for 18th still going strong, which is fairly nice to see. But they are about 7 seconds behind Satellite ahead, so they're not really challenging so far. And they've now got that Monaco car coming up to lap them as well. So it is going to be a bit of a awkward battle when the blue flags start coming as well, because they're going to have to start letting the leaders through. And just had word from Sean Jacobs that he's not 100% sure, but he said it might be possible to do only the 2-tyre strategy, which would, in my eyes, make sense as to why that would be a little bit quicker for Christian Michel. But again, we'll see at the next pit stop how that works out, and if there is another shorter pit stop, we'll try and work out what's going on.
I think Nico Barkley's just had a moment because Simic is now up to 4th and has got a pretty decent gap to Barkley already.
Must have been because obviously he was up into Nico Barkley was up into 3rd place as well, so he's lost a couple of positions. So those drivers swapping around left, right, and centre in the last sort of 40 minutes or so, in various different order of those 3 cars. There's now Evolution Motorsports back onto the podium, and as you say, Wanako down there into 5th. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nico's made a tiny bit of a mistake, because I think he was a bit too far ahead to sort of have a battle. So maybe it was also those blue flags that we were talking about as well. But certainly, I think something has gone on there for the Wanako Club.
And Bart Slobodjian also managing to get past Matthew Fennell into the chicane. This will be a replay of Nico Barkley. Did he do what we've seen others do? Yep. He's done it, Matthew de Groot. And there goes Simoncic and Bok.
And that just shows you how fine the margins are. Tiny mistake. He didn't really have a sort of a proper spin. Managed to save it fairly nicely. But obviously with the gaps being so close, Burst and Evolution managed to get past. So yeah, he'll be kicking himself a little bit because now he's got to overtake both of those drivers after doing a really good job to get up there into that 3rd place. So yeah, he's going to be a little bit annoyed with himself, so hopefully he doesn't start overdriving the car and make another mistake. But yeah, that he probably just got distracted a little bit by the cars ahead. But unfortunately, it's not really an excuse, because either way, the time is always made on the track. And now we see him getting past some of the other traffic here. Let's see the Flying Goat, who he was trying to overtake earlier when he made that bit of the spin, but then also Evolution and Burst are just ahead of him. Though he's going to be losing a tiny bit of time there behind the Flying Goat. So now I'll jump back to the main screen. We've got Ferrari getting very close to Vizuzul coming down the start-finish straight. But is it going to be enough for that Bentley to get the slipstream? I think he's just going to pull back in and have to sit on that one for P.
Yellow out in sector 3, but that's been quickly cleared. Simoncic now right up against Leon Bok. The gap was just 0.7 of a second as they crossed the line. I think Bok's managed to pull back out ever so slightly. But they're still running 3rd, 4th, 5th. So Bok, Simoncic, Barkley. Still looking at the battle on screen of maybe not. Bart Slobodjian and Matthew Fennell here. That's Slobodjian in front in the Aston Martin for Volante. Matthew Fennell in the Porsche for Speedy Mate. These two have been battling earlier in the race. Bart managed to get past into the chicane. It seems to be pulling away from Fennell at the minute.
And these drivers obviously in their first stint of the race for these for the driver swaps that have happened during that first pit stops. They're obviously still trying to get up to speed a little bit, about halfway through the stint now. They should be getting it now. Burst Esport with Yannis Simčić on the back of Leon Bok. And is there going to be a bit of a slipstream battle down into turn number 1? Bok seems comfortable because he's come back to the racing line fairly early. So Simčić is going to have to work a little bit harder for that. But it does seem that he's got a bit more pace because he was a few seconds behind, but he's now caught up to the Evolution Motorsports driver. And therefore has a little bit more speed. But can he make it work? Can he make an overtake stick? Michio wasn't able to do it earlier on. But maybe just that extra long stint that he did, he was probably saving a little bit of fuel and sort of hindering himself in his ability to make an overtake. So maybe Simoncic, who is now not really worrying about fuel for the rest of the race, maybe he can go flat out and try and get this overtake done.
Yeah, Bok pitted a bit earlier than Simoncic. So Simoncic will have better tyres and more fuel, and Bok will have worse tyres and less fuel. So there's a little bit of a crossover there in performance, trade-offs between the good and the bad. So Simoncic is still going to have to work to get past the BMW here, but not. It's not going to be as easy as you might think.
I would imagine, just with the way that things have gone this season, that Simčić has a little bit more pace potential as well. He's probably got a little bit of speed in him compared to Leon. Last lap he was 0.6 of a second faster as well. Obviously that's going to sort of neutralise a little bit now that he's sort of stuck behind him a little bit. But there's obviously going to be a bit of a pace advantage there just due to the drivers, although that's not to say anything bad about Leon Bach, as I mentioned earlier before. Very, very fast driver in his own right. But now Simčić getting a good exit out of the final chicane. Can he get the slipstream? We know that Bach likes to defend on this inside there, but it looks like BMW just has a little bit too much pace. You can see that he's actually pulling away almost, maybe a few millimeters. So that's quite an interesting fact. So Simčić is going to have to find somewhere else on the track to make that overtake, because it looks like Evolution have got some very good top speed.
I mean, the UI I'm using doesn't have pedal input, so I don't know if Simčić maybe lifted out a tiny bit just to save a little bit more fuel, because it hasn't really been aggressive. But Nico Barkley has managed to pull something back here. Hang on a second. Barkley's close enough to make a move here.
Yeah, Barkley, he certainly has the speed. We saw that with him able to get up into that third place. And he's obviously going to be very determined after he'll be kicking himself after making that mistake. And it seems like this is now a three-way battle. Obviously, we've got the lapped car ahead there of the core team. So it's a three-way battle now for this third place. And I couldn't really tell you who's going to come out on top of this, because all three of these drivers are very quick. And it almost seems that at least in the last few laps, the pace has been the opposite of this, with Nico Barkley being a little bit quicker than Simčić, who's a little bit quicker than Bach. So let's see a bit of a replay here.
It looked like Simčić just slowed down, but just look how fast Barkley's closing here.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Simčić is sort of a little bit stuck with Bach, so maybe he was just trying to take it nicely, and obviously Barkley had the clean air and the ability to close up, where Simčić is just a little bit stuck behind us. We now see sort of a half move there from Simčić, just having a bit of a look down the inside of Leon Bach. But we know as we get towards this finish straight, he is, even in the slipstream, he's going to struggle a little bit to get alongside. But if he gets absolutely close enough, he might be able to get just enough slipstream to stay involved as we get towards turn one. But yeah, that BMW just very good in a straight line, and nothing that Simčić can do at this part of the track.
I mean, I'm on board with Simčić. I didn't hear any lifting, so it looks like that BMW does have superior straight line advantage at the minute.
Which probably makes sense with how Monaco took a little bit of a while to make that overtake work as well. So maybe the BMW able to run with a bit less wing, and Evolution Motorsports having just a bit less wing compared to Monaco maybe as well. This is a bit of an interesting track for the setup, with pretty much half the track being really technical corners, and then the other half of the track being just straights, because after this hairpin you pretty much only have spoon corner and the final chicane, and you've already done only about a third or half a lap by this point. So it's a very interesting one in terms of the amount of straight lines that there actually are, and you can probably get away with a little bit lower wing than you can do on some other tracks.
What's also interesting to note here is that look how close Barkley gets to Simčić in Sector 1, but then look at how Simčić pulls away in Sectors 2 and 3 to be almost up the diffuser of Leon Bach.
And now he's getting close into 130R. He's got in the slipstream this time, but just not enough to overtake into 130R. But can he get riding
really
that curb?
soaring at that wheel?
Yeah, he couldn't quite get off that curb. He was sort of half bottomed out. And now Simčić, he's actually going to have a nice exit there, and he's going to get in the slipstream. But is it close enough to have the slipstream outweigh the difference in the top speed? It's pretty much equal actually. Maybe the BMW just getting initially those extra couple of centimeters, which is all important. And Simčić now very close to Leon, almost touching him there, coming through the apex of turn number 2. And yeah, he needs to find somewhere else to overtake halfway around the lap so he can try and get himself ahead before the couple of straights coming towards the end of the lap, because it seems like that's where he's close enough.
There's Barkley catching up again.
Barkley, especially as we saw a couple of laps ago, through this sequence of the track, he is the quickest. So it's seesawing between these drivers at what point of the track they are quickest.
Then watch by the end of the lap, Simičić will be almost embedded in the rear of that other BMW. So Barkley's absolutely flying through Sector 1, but Simičić has something in Sectors 2 and 3. Because look, he's pulling away now.
Yes, it's obviously... there's a couple of things going on. Obviously, it's different cars for these drivers. The drivers themselves have different characteristics and preferences with how they like certain corners, and also the setup as well. The setup on the cars, pretty much everything you can think of is adjustable in these cars. Dampers, springs, ride heights, wing angle, anti-roll bars, all sorts going on there. And if you just tweak it, and look at that again. As you say, Simičić in that Sector 2 just gets all the way back up from Nico Barkley all the way back up to box. So that's obviously where their car's the strongest. At this point in the track is now where Leon Bock is the strongest with the top speed of that car.
Someone's had an accident there.
And that's not going to be a small one either at that corner. And all the brake marker boards have got, so that could be quite confusing for these other drivers, as they are obviously trying to use those. But now Simičić once again getting very close to Leon Bock, but he's going to have to try very hard to get that slipstream down into turn number one. He's going to have to do a big dive, maybe even into turn number 2 on one lap if he can try and get a bit of a run. But no, he's going to have to just sit behind there for now and see what else he can do, because he's really getting held up here, because they're now 20 seconds behind Nita Velux.
This is John Nelson for Omicron. Oh, he's gone full Kobayashi. Did he hit that?
He may have just slightly brushed the wall at worst, but that wasn't actually so bad, as he's trying to pull away in 6th gear there, so that wasn't really working. But yeah, that was a big moment. But once again, we've seen this a couple of times this race already. People have had big moments, but not really hit the wall. I mean, even Russo, who hit the wall earlier on, now obviously down in 6th place. Big moment, hit the wall, but it didn't really hinder him too much. So a few drivers getting a bit lucky this race.
Somewhere Remco Major is getting itchy over damage model, but still better to be still in the race than out of it.
Yeah, see, a lot of this is just driver issue, or driver mistakes as well. So if you keep it on the road, then you're going to be in the better position. Obviously, Nico Barkley is now ruining that opportunity to get that 3rd place, because he probably would have been pulling miles away of Leon Bock, because it doesn't seem that Bock at this point in the race has loads of speed as he goes off wide there, and that's going to give Simičić the place, and that is as easy as you like for Simičić. He didn't have to alter his line at all. But now Leon Bock is going to be under pressure from Nico Barkley. But is that top speed actually good enough to come back as Simičić? Maybe not this lap, but maybe in the coming laps we will see. But Nico Barkley once again needs to try and overtake this Evolution Motorsports car. He did it earlier on, now he's got to try and do it all over again.
Interesting to see what Barkley can do in Sector 1 here. He's been so much quicker than Simičić on the last few laps. We've been seeing that BMW of the Monaco team almost inside the Corvette. It seems Barkley, so he's got so much more pace through that particular right-hander to try and just bring it even closer, and then it just, he's understeered, and he's got it all to do again.
It is very interesting that even with the same car, they've obviously set it. Oh, is he going to touch it? Is he going to touch
Bang.
it? Oh yeah, it was more of like a sideways. That perspective wasn't the easiest to see, but it was more of like a sideways swipe actually. So potentially not so much damage on that, as Nico Barkley had a bit of a look into Degner too. So Bock losing 1 position now has the potential to lose 2 positions in a very short space of time. Now I assume him and his Evolution Motorsports team will not want that to happen. But this, as we get towards this second half of the lap, is where Bock generally rings out the lap time just a little bit. And as I was saying, it's quite interesting that between the two teams in the same chassis, they are having very different characteristics with their setups. Obviously, they are having a bit of a different time. So Bot goes just a little bit wide. Nico thought about it, but not enough room there for him to get down.
Looks like Bot's struggling now. As we go back to the battle for 11th. Bart Slobodjian for Volante, that Aston Martin, and then Beta Bello for Pro Simtech in behind. With one of the Speedy Mike cars just ahead of them. There's probably about 1.5 second gap between the Speedy Mike Porsche and Bart Slobodjian in 11th, but still keeping well within striking distance of that Aston Martin is the BMW. Aston Martin sort of out of sorts compared to the previous season, the VLMC. Aston Martin was a decent car to have. It's sort of not been favoured this time round. I think the team's going for what was good in GT Pro and GT Challenge beforehand, and then the BOP doing BOP things. We've still got a decent spread of cars on the grid.
Yeah, I remember that last season at VLMC. There was a whole host of Aston Martin GT3s, wasn't there? That was obviously the one of choice, but obviously when it gets to the sign-up time, it just depends. Teams are going to choose whatever the best car is. You can't predict what the BOP is going to do, and where so there's BOP from Studio 397 themselves, but also sometimes SimRacing.Club does a little bit of a BOP on top of that as well. So you don't really know what's going to happen, so you can only ever choose where you think the best car is at that time. Otherwise, you're just simply going to be losing points in the first few races of the season. And it's unpredictable, but sometimes it just gets a little bit different during the season as well. As we mentioned, there's quite a big BOP change before the recent GT Pro series started a couple of months ago. So back in for the Indianapolis race, there was quite a big change in the running order. We had Remco Major suddenly for undercover racing battling at the front with Burst on that day. So things can happen like that, but you can only ever choose what you have in front of you at the time. And it's a bit of a shame because Aston Martin is a quite good looking car actually, and especially with that Volante livery, I quite like it, but unfortunately there's only 2 of them on the field.
I mean, next season we might have the Ferrari to choose, so expect a few prancing horses on the grid if that does happen. Ferrari again out of sorts in GT Pro and in GT Challenge, so it's not particularly liked in terms of the BOP. Still a lot of Ferrari fans, so it might just get picked because it's a Ferrari, so we might get even more cars to choose from and see on the grid in various colourful liveries next season, if and when that happens.
And also the Audi is sort of back in the frame. There was none chosen this season, or even I don't believe last season as well in VLMC, because just for a couple of years it just wasn't really competitive, but now it is both the 2018 and 2019 Evo version, so maybe we'll see some of them come back as well. But the teams aren't allowed to change during the season, so they got to stick with what they got and get on with it in the politest possible way. Just got to get out there and drive to see what you can do. And Volante sticking with that Aston Martin, which they used last season as well, and also for the GTE for VEC this season as well. So they're obviously some Aston fans and keeping with their favourite brand. But now we see Nico Buckley not quite in the region of getting past Leon Box. I don't think Box's pace is too bad, also considering Simicic hasn't really got up the road too far.
No, it's just under 2 seconds with Simicic and Bock at the minute. You can just see Simicic there heading out the left of shot. Barkley is close, but not close enough. The slipstream just not that powerful in these cars compared to open wheelers.
Yeah, it's despite sort of the way the track is laid out. The straights here aren't actually crazy long, especially that start-finish straight. It isn't really as long as you would think compared to some other circuits, and also not really having a braking zone coming off it does make it a little bit harder, which is why places such as the hairpin in Sector 2 and even Spoon Corner can be actually a bit better of overtaking opportunities, because you generally go on the brakes just a little bit more, so there's that potential to have a bit of a dive. And as we see once again, Monaco in this first sector are very good. And as you come through Degner 1, click into the second sector, and now this is generally the part of the track where Bok then starts to get a bit of an advantage coming back. And not quite close enough into the hairpin this time round, but we're already coming towards the second hour being completed, and therefore another opportunity with some strategies to try and work out where you're going to go. Obviously, endurance racing isn't just about the specific overtakes on the track. It is also due to the strategy and the consistency and not making mistakes, which is what Monaco did, and therefore why they are here down in this 5th position. So that's why you have to always think on the fly and try and get yourself in the best position possible. And now once again, Barkley just loses a bit of time there in that sector 2, which puts him a bit out of position here to try and make an overtake work coming through sector 3, which is pretty much only 130R and the final chicane. It's a very, very short final sector here.
Yeah, I think that's usually what happens with tracks that were designed for testing rather than racing, is that you find them to be highly technical and not really giving you that many opportunities to overtake. I mean, Barcelona is another example of that, as we cut back to Bart Slobodan and Beta Bello, still running nose to tail. Bello a tiny bit closer than he has been since the last time we saw them. As we see the Speedy Mike car still there in the distance, 2 seconds ahead of this battle. Half a second or so between the Aston Martin and the BMW. But not really in any position to start trying to make any moves as of yet.
Now they're getting pretty close out of that spoon corner onto this back straight. And this is really one of the better overtaking opportunities coming down towards this chicane. But you really have to full send it through 130R. High risk, high reward. But as we've seen so many drivers already having big moments there coming through that corner. And not really what you want to be doing, as Barkley getting very close there on the brakes. He obviously had a good run through the couple of Degners, as we saw Bok was struggling there a few laps ago as well. So wouldn't be surprised if that was repeated again. And Barkley knew that was a good overtaking opportunity to get himself up into that 4th place. But he's going to have to sit there now and try and do something. There is some traffic coming up actually, and we have seen that traffic does play quite a big factor in some of these battles often. And that was one of the reasons why I think it was Nico Barkley, why he spun, actually getting a bit distracted from some traffic ahead of him. So hopefully none of that happens. It is that satellite car in between Bok and the Burst Esport entry. Can Barkley get a bit closer on the brakes this time to put himself in a good position? And he's very close indeed. Bok will be getting a tiny bit of slipstream from the car ahead as well. This is one of the best overtaking opportunities that Barkley's had, but once again Bok is going to go to the inside. We've seen him do this time and time again, so Barkley's probably going to be forced to the outside, and we've seen him do this already. Can he do it once again round the outside? No, he's not quite close enough, so he's going to have to sit there, but maybe up the inside of turn 2. He's thinking about it, but Bok defends pretty well there to hold on to that 4th place.
Yeah, Bok had a little bit of a slide coming out of turn 2, but it is easy to get distracted by lap traffic, especially if somebody else has made a mistake ahead of you. That happened to me in a 12 hours of Bathurst. Car ahead spun and I followed him in sympathy because I was too busy watching what he was doing and panicked. So it is tricky lapping while fighting and lapping while trying to drive quickly. Barkley's still right at the back of the other BMW of Liam Bok into Degner 1, trying to maximise the entry for Degner 2. Not going to have the exit with which to give him a run up towards the hairpin, so Barkley's only real chance is either into turn 1, as we see Beta Bello sending it and having to cut the chicane. He'll have to give the position back there, which he does so. And he'll have to, again, see what he can do on the next lap.
Yeah, sometimes you do just have to send it a little bit, but unfortunately, if you go a little bit too far like that, then yeah, you do have to often give the place back. He could have easily just probably gone flat over the chicane and carried on with that position, but sometimes it's best just to do the right thing and give the place back. Obviously, it looks just a bit nicer for you and your team as well, a bit more friendly and sportsmanlike. And at the end of the day, everyone's here to have a good race, and nothing dodgy like that. So good that he gave that back. But Nico Barkley coming through the final chicane again, a little bit further back actually. But it does seem that maybe this is going to be one of his best overtaking opportunities, actually, because going around the outside, he's obviously done it before, so he can have a bit of confidence with that. But he just needs to work his way up into that position because it's not quite there just yet.
One thing that Barkley's doing in the chicane is he's taking the tighter right into the chicane, as we see the replay of Beto Bello and Bart Slavagian into said chicane. So he's taken a tighter right-hander to open up the left-hander so he can get the power down earlier and get that better run-up, and he just sends it and just overshoots it entirely. And then boing, and then gives his place back.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, he does pinch over to the left there to give that back, so that's what we like to see, but took a little bit too much risk there and ended up going off the track as well. Once again going a little bit wide. I mean, that is sort of the natural line, but if you push that a little bit too far, you will be going into that gravel and potentially losing that position. So Barkley, I really think after all this time sat behind both Bock and Simicic, he's going to be hurting, especially considering the gap between McDuff and Simicic is now up to 25 seconds, as we already see the race leader come into the pit lane. Now that is very early with an hour and 5 minutes to go. Considering him pitting this early means he hasn't done full stints or full potential stints, which means he might have actually underfueled as I thought to get into this position, as you see his teammate go past that. So that would make sense, but he now has to do a full 100% a full tank towards the end of this race. So different strategies playing out. Maybe just did a bit of an underfuel to try and get himself in that position. But now we see Christian Michel leading the way from Roy McDuff and Yerny Simicic. So remember, Burst Esport in that current position would be your champions with one race to go, still in Spa in a month's time. Evolution Motorsports currently second in the championship, and they are really fighting with Go Team Racing, so they're doing well there. They have 2 places ahead of them with Wanako in between them. Scuderia and Mascala, haven't really spoken about them too much, but they're having a solid race there in P7. Core Team in 8th, One Move Esports down in 9th place, and Volante back in the top 10. Not so bad of a race for them. Then Pro Sim Tech Betabeo, who we saw just send it a little bit too hard there in the final chicane, in 11th place. Joy Racing in 12th, Speedy Mike there in 13th, Snow Shatton in 14th, Revo Satellite Racing in 15th place, and we have Core Team Racing, the Flying Goat, Seawolf, Omicron, and the second Speedy Mike to round out the top 20. But as you see, those guys are already a couple of laps down, and we have Caspian Motorsports another 3 laps down, and our 1 DNF so far, the Trojan Donut Automotive team with Gasper Supan there in 22nd place. So we come back to the racing, and Joy Racing now coming into the pit lane also a bit before the final hour. So these guys obviously not doing any sort of fuel saving in that first part of the race, and they're not going to be having a shorter pit stop. So they are going to have to do a full tank, a full stint towards the end. So those drivers staying out now, even the likes of Burst Esport, they might be going another 20 or 30 minutes. Are going to have a really short pit stop compared to those guys.
Yeah, Christian Michel's given up the Citroën Nitro-Velux. McLaren, he's handed it over to Mika Happinen. That's Mika Happinen, not Hakkinen. So he's going to be taking that car to the end. Rory McDuff still circulating there in the lead. That puts Jenny Simicic, or Jenny Simicic, I should say, into second position. Leon Bock third. Georgina Dev has gone to fourth. Andrea Mascala fifth, and then Mika Happinen in sixth. So cars doing their driver swaps as well. So, yeah, it is the final hour. This is where it's going to start kicking off, trying to get positions. Interesting to see how much further that Burst Esports Corvette can go.
Yeah, considering they pit after pretty much an hour and 15 minutes. If they do another hour and 15 minutes, then that's only going to leave 30 minutes left in the race. So they could genuinely be going for another 30 minutes now. So we're not going to know what this strategy is going to do really until that point in the race. So as we get towards this final hour, do not be surprised if things start turning around. Wanako have already been into the pit lane there, now down in 9th place. So that's going to be crucial for that battle with Evolution, and Burst only a couple of seconds up the road as well. As we saw, the teams getting a bit of an undercut can often gain some lap time with those fresher tyres, and that could be a very important factor for how this works out. But then if, for instance, the likes of Burst Esport then basically do a half pit stop at the end, then they're going to save upwards of 20 seconds in the pit lane. So that is going to be a very important factor for the final hour of this race, as we are starting to get into that final pit stop sequence.
Oh, Bettabello going for a mini spin. Lock your brakes. There you go. Get that thing turned around and he'll be back on his way, but he's not going to be happy with that little mistake.
And interestingly, Roy McDuff now coming into the pit lane only a lap after his teammate, whereas on the first stop he stayed out about an extra 5 laps compared to his teammate. So that would also indicate a potential under-fueling for Christian Michel at that first pit stop, which is obviously then why they had the second, or the slower pit stop and then the early second pit stop. That would make sense, as we see Mika Happinen now in that car. And Roy McDuff, I'm sure, is going to be doing a drive swap as well, but we won't see until the car pulls away who is going to be getting into that car. There has been a few different drivers in there over the course. There was over the course of the season, I should say, but it was Joachim Stensers in the previous race, but it is Jake Destoop in that car now. So we need to see what his pace is like as he comes out side by side with another McLaren of Snow Shatton. So we need to see what Jake can do now and see if he can do anything to come back at his teammates. Though with 1 hour to go, it's going to be quite difficult to make up that time. But you can see the stop has now neutralised the gap, I should say, is neutralised just a little bit back to what it was before the previous pit stop of around 13 seconds.
Yanis Simic in the lead. So with 1.5 seconds to Leon Bok in behind, and then 25 seconds behind Leon Bok is the Go Team racing car, Georgian and Dev. So how many more laps can Yanis Simic pull out here? How long was it after Rory did heat pit?
It was a good 10 or 15 minutes. So if you add that on, 10 or 15 minutes again for this second stint added together, he could potentially be going, for another 20 or 30 minutes towards sort of 40, maybe 35 minutes left of the race. And they did do pretty much a full pit stop in their driver change stop as well. So
lap 37 it was.
It's quite an interesting one to see how far they go, because genuinely, if they pit with 30 minutes to go, they will save 20, 25 seconds in the pit lane, which is huge amounts. But obviously, through this strategy, they've lost a lot of track time position. But then if they can then make that back in pit stop, that is really what it's all about. And they're now a good 3 seconds ahead of Leon Bok, so he's not under any pressure. He can just go out and do his laps.
So it'll be lap 74-ish. He'll be coming in. My maths isn't my strong suit, but that's what I'm assuming, as Leon Bok understeer, oversteer, all the steer through Spoon Curve. That's a Cobra movement. That
was a very good save. Managed to straighten her up, as we see Andrea Muscala come in. So he started the car, and due to the driver change rule, he will be changing to his brother, Christian. With the Muscala brothers, as we now see the Flying go up into 15th place now, battling with Thomas Jacobs for Snow Shatton, number 34 car. It seems like they've got through that sequence quite nicely, but it seems like that McLaren who has just made that pit stop, has got to around the outside of Degner 1. That is not going to be the place where you want to go. Oh my days! Round the outside of Degner 1. That's an unbelievable. Congratulations to Thomas Jacobs. That is going to be overtake of the day, I'm sure. That is just a little bit better than Nico Barclays in turn 1 and 2 earlier.
We don't even see the top guys do that. So, I mean, not saying that Thomas Jacobs is a rubbish driver because he just pulled that off, but, you know, we don't even see Simoncic or Hoyer or Yovsky pulling that kind of thing off.
Yeah, that's quite an overtake. I mean, a lot of trust for Maris to pull out of that one. But now Leon Bock in the pit lane, followed by someone else. I think this one there, the Bentleys, I think just a little bit behind him as well. Leon Bock now will be doing a driver swap as well. As we mentioned, all teams have to do a driver swap. No drivers allowed to do more than 70% of the race. Obviously just a little bit over 2/3 distance. But that is done on lap count, not time, which is quite crucial for if it ever rains during the race, because obviously in the rain you do less laps. But that is something that you have to plan for. But with it being that 70%, you do have that little bit extra buffer from obviously 2/3 in this case, with being 2 hours and 1 hour. And I think it is Pascal Schmidt who will be getting in that car. Seems to be Leon Bock and Pascal Schmidt who are doing most of the driving for that team this season. Obviously, Evolution Motorsports have a number of other drivers in their team. There's another Bock, Yannick Bock as well. Obviously, Alex Siebel, Dennis Jordan are the main contenders there. But in this series, it seems to be Bock and Schmidt who are in that entry. As we now see pit crew defending a little bit from Ollie McGowan, who is getting there for Speedy My Racing for 12th place overall. So the battles are still going on up and down the field.
Anthony Maris, this is going to be a replay of the overtake. Oh,
yeah, Maris was just like, nope.
I haven't been that impressed with an overtake since Jonas Ravio went round the outside of Porsche curves in GT Pro. That was a brilliant move.
Yeah, that is. Genuinely, that is one of the best moves we've seen in a long time. To have that level of confidence to go around the outside as well. He had full trust in his cars. He had new tyres, just go out the pit lane and made that work, which is what we like to see. Some ballsy overtakes. And so we jump to Tom Kapusta with another Thomas Andrea Maharazoa for Seawolf Net Race in 16th and 17th place. You'd expect these two teams to be a little bit higher, but they've just struggled today for a number of reasons. As we now see Nedev come into the pit lane for Go Team Racing. As we mentioned a few times, they're in 3rd place in the championship, battling with Evolution Motorsports. So there will be Russo hitting the barrier a little bit earlier on, dropped them down into that 6th place at the time. And that is going to be a bit disappointing for them. But it's actually quite interesting that Go Team Racing have had a few issues this race. They have Wanako and also Burst Esports. So there's been a number of issues for a lot of these drivers. And really the one not making too many mistakes so far is that number 30 that is leading the race. Obviously not at this moment in time because Burst still needs to make a pit stop. But yeah, the number 30 leading the race. One of the main reasons they are there is because they're not making mistakes. And at the end of the day, that's how you win endurance races.
Endurance racing is a totally different kettle of fish to sprint racing. You see FSR tomorrow, it's just flat out racing from beginning to end. Whereas this, you need to play the long game, a lot more numbers involved, alternate strategies if things go wrong. If you crash on lap 2 and you have to put new tyres on and top the fuel, that's going to set things about. So you have all these different situations and scenarios to think about. But still, we've only had one DNF, and those who have had spins and impacts with the wall have managed to continue, so it's not been a bad outing, considering Jimmy Allison said that VEC Suzuka was the best round of the season so far. I think this might be going the same way.
Which is quite funny, because one of the reasons why after the season 10, I think season 10 VC was the last time we came here, 3 seasons ago. One of the reasons why it sort of went off was because there were so many people complaining that it wasn't great for endurance racing and that sort of stuff. But then, as you say, certainly providing some very entertaining racing, both 2 weeks ago for VEC and then also again today. Obviously, tricky in certain sectors, but this track is just so good, so fun to drive. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it on the calendar next season as well.
I think the thing with this place is because Sector 1 is so technical and so tricky, you have to be careful, otherwise, crashes happen. So that might be a reason for it, as saying all that stuff about things going well. I think that was Yuri Vislusil having a moment that brought out the yellow flags. I think it was. I just saw him move down the order a couple of places. So I think he's had a spin at turn 1 as well.
And not the first one, not the first one this race. A number of drivers there having some issues. Let's see a replay now. Visluzel coming into turn number 1. Oh,
yeah,
just lost the rear. And he can't quite save it, so it goes for even more of a spin. Can he keep out the wall? I think he just about does.
Yeah, gravel did its work. As Simic pits, lap 65.
Well, that's a little bit earlier than I was expecting, but it did seem so that they underfueled just a little bit in that first pit stop, at least. So it is interesting that Mitchie saved for so long to then do 2 short stints with Yerne. Quite an interesting one there, because Mitchie really did a long stint. You wouldn't see too many people going much longer than that without going 3-4 seconds a lap slower on purpose to save the time.
That was a 27-second stop.
Yeah, so they obviously have enough fuel to get to the end.
Yeah.
They obviously have been fuel saving, and they have come out 12 seconds on the tower behind second Netros Nita Velux. So it's quite interesting that they have halved the gap to so number 60 is half the gap to number 30, but then also number 49 is half the gap as well. Well, actually, it's just updated. That was the leader. So the tower was showing the leader. It's now gone to the interval. They're only 2 seconds behind Nita Velux. Apologies. So they've actually saved around 20 seconds during that pit stop, as was predicted. So they've literally halved the gap also to the number 30 leading the race. So they've done a very good strategy here. They got themselves back up into that 3rd place, only 2 seconds off second, and that has turned out very well, considering look at where Wanako and Evolution Motorsports are. They are 26, 27 seconds behind for Wanako, and then over 30 for Evolution. So this has been a very good strategy from Burst, and you would assume they've taken enough fuel to not save towards the end either. So if they can go flat out on less fuel because they pitted later, then this could be a very quick stint for Yannis Simic.
Be a blinding strategy play if they pull it off and win the race here with just that on pace. I don't know if that spin from Michi Hoyer's already got a dent in that, as we see Milan and Visluzel coming through the spoon curve. Visluzel having that spin that would have ruined his tyres, so Boya Milan probably trying to make easy pickings of the BMW in front as lap traffic gets out of the way. That's the car in 14th position. That's Anthony Maris, a Flying Goat. They've been getting a lot of TV time tonight.
Well,
they've got one of the best liveries on the grid, so it's
But
It's
also,
only natural.
unfortunately, they've been lapped a couple of times as well, which always is a bit of an awkward one for getting some screen time. But now, Borja Milan... Oh, hits the back of Isuzu, who I think was trying to come into the pit lane there. I am pretty sure that that is what was going on, because there seemed to be a sudden...
He's going to have to go around again, because there's no...
This is that's a very dangerous situation to be in, but fortunately no cars are coming, and I think either way he's going to come into the pit lane.
Yeah,
but I'm sure he was actually trying to do that in the first place, which is why there was an awkward change of line, potentially, as we now see Borja Milan coming through. I think this is in Dunlop on the previous lap. And, he manages to save that. That was what Rob Moore did earlier on. And fortunately, he was able to save that, unlike Rob did. And now, Isuzu is in the pit lane. We jump to Oliver Newman, who's got into the Joy Racing team, ahead of Seawolf Net Race there in 17th place. And as we mentioned a few times, the battles have still continued up and down the grid, despite us being obviously over 2 hours into this race now. There seems to be some battles here and there, up and down the field, which is always what we want to see.
Yeah, we always want to see a bit of action, see some proper racing. A boring broadcast otherwise. So I think what we've got here is a replay of Veslusel coming through the chicane, ready to take the pit lane entry. And I think he may have just lifted off to go in, and Borja Milan didn't realise that was what was happening and just hit him.
Yeah, some awkward situations have happened. We'll talk about happening is leading the race there. We're going to get another replay first of Milan here. Let's see this again.
Yeah, so he's trying to slipstream him, lifts, bang.
It's interesting to...
There was no way he was going to react to that.
Yeah, it's interesting to lift with that much, but then I guess Borja was so close to him. I wouldn't say that was Borja's fault. He couldn't... Yeah, I mean, there was no other indication of what was going to go on. So you could actually see that after the contact, Borja almost didn't really drive away, because he was obviously a bit shocked about what happened. As we come to Jake Destut, who is now second place, only 11 seconds behind his teammates. So they obviously were about 25 seconds at some point, but that gap to Simčić is the important one. But Simčić has, well, gone a bit slower, as you see. Last lap time, 1.4 seconds slower. Interval is now up to 6 seconds, so he's lost about 4 seconds since coming out from his pit stop.
So Simčić closing ever so slightly. I was going to check on, see what the lap times were. So Simčić did a 2:01.6 previous, and Jake Stowe lapping slightly quicker at the minute. So interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this one develops. I don't know if there was something else involved there, but we were expecting Simčić to really be on the pace coming up to the back of them, with being on a bit less fuel. Yeah, interesting one. We'll see how that one plays out. But now Newman is now defending from Andrea Maharazoa, who's got closer to him, coming up to now Spoon Corner and onto the back straight, which, as we've seen, is probably the best, not necessarily overtaking opportunity, but the best opportunity to set yourself up. It's got a nice run of slipstream into a very quick corner before a hard braking zone into that final chicane. It was a little bit too far back this time round. It seems that he is going to be going through there rather nicely, but I think that 15th place is certainly going to be on the cards for the Seawolf team.
Looks like Jake Stewart has found a little bit of pace. He's pulling away from Simčić ever so slightly, gap up to 6.6 seconds. Closing again, so that's going to ebb and flow as they go in and out of different corners. But we've had another DNF one of the Speedy Mike cars in 20th. So that's Osasoya Emenwen that's withdrawn that car, or crashed that car, or discoed that car, or whatever it might be. See if we can see what happened to that one. Still one Speedy Mike car circulating in 10th, so a decent day for them. Ollie McGowan in that car, a lap behind the leaders, but still a top 10 finish for Speedy Mike. Decent day out.
Yeah, there was one race recently where they had, because they have 3 entries total, obviously only 2 here today, but they have 3 entries total, and I believe they're all in the top 10 or sort of, top 12, and it's looking really good. Then unfortunately, I think it was 2 of them on that day DNF'd, but once again, Speedy Mike having a DNF, which is not ideal, especially as their team owner is Sean Jacobs, who's obviously the director of this series. So he will be a little bit disappointed with that one, but they've got a solid team there. But getting towards the end of the race is always what is important. As we mentioned, you do get points after, I believe it is 50% is the classification rate. So they would have got that, but again, you're only going to get points for 20th because everyone else is going to come past you, or even 21st, as you'll have Caspian getting past them at some point as well. So that's not what you want, as we're going to see
some point in the next 10 seconds. So has he just... No? Okay. Oh, here we are. Oh, it's a 130R moment. And dropped. And thwack.
Ooh.
Now, that's already happened once.
Oh,
and they got away with it.
Yeah, that's just such a awkward situation to be in, because we mentioned with these cars, you can just lose the rear a little bit, especially this Porsche where the weight is out of the rear as well. Not ideal, and as soon as you lose it, you just touch that curb or that Astro and you're gone. As we now go to Pascal Schmidt in 6th place. He's got Go Team Racing some 27 seconds behind him, which they'll be looking at with some smiles as they are battling for that 2nd place in the championship. Although Nita Velux are going to be closing, although it is the number 60, which is their main rival, who is in 2nd place in the championship. So I think if Nita Velux cared about the championship enough, they would probably swap those positions, because they would certainly be getting some good points on Evolution Motorsports. They're being down in 6th position. So that is maybe something they're going to be thinking about when we get towards the latter part of this race. But for now, it looks like they're going to be continuing as they are. And that would be certainly a benefit for Evolution, who's once again having a solid race, but 6th place isn't going to win you the title.
Volante are going to have a short run to the end. Their car's just come out of the pit lane, so that's Sebastian. So they're going to be doing the remaining 40 minutes or so on a lighter load, fresher tyres. Still a bit far back to take 8th, but still 9th. That'll be a decent return for them, with Speedy Mike just being lapped. So we've only got top 9 on the lead lap. Happinen, Destut, Simicic flying up front at the minute. Gap now 8 seconds between Destut and Simicic, so whatever Burst have tried, I don't think it's worked out very well for them.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a weird one. I'm very surprised by this, because I thought they were going to be, always now see a bit of a battle coming to number 1. But I really thought Burst were going to come all over the back of them, but maybe they're still trying to do a bit of fuel saving, as there's now a fairly big gap between them. But Pickerel needs to try and first of all get past Andrea Maharazoa for that 16th place. And the core team having a bit of a mixed race today. They've got up into that 12th place with one of their team's 17th here, but unfortunately their other 3rd car, which I believe is their Corvette, Callaway Corvette entry, had to have a non-attendance today for some reason. So it's a bit unfortunate for them. As we now come to Thomas Jacobs, who's in front of the other core team racing for Zuzul, and they've got Burst just in front of them, and Jacobs was obviously the one who did that amazing move in Degna 1 about 20 minutes ago. Really putting his name on the map with that one. But he's holding on to 11th place pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's made every highlight reel for eternity, that one. Let's try to see what else is happening on down the field. Field very spread out at the minute as Ludovic Ferry comes into the pit lane for his final stop, so a short run for him to the end. Let's see how long he's stationary for. So, okay, so I've got my screen set up, so it's got a little ticker on the position light. It's just got up to 10 seconds now. I think this might just be a fuel run. I don't think he's taking tyres because the car hasn't gone up as of yet, but I'll keep an eye on that and see what happens. Oh, he's left. 21 seconds. He was stopped. Just taking fuel and just going to the end.
So just double check the points. So if it happens if it finishes the way that it is, I guess Evolution have moved up to fifth place now, so they will be getting 30 points for 5th place, and the number 60, who's their main Nitavalex rival, who's currently 2nd, will be getting 40 points. They'll be gaining 10 points, which means there'll be only another 10 points between them. And if the two Nitavalex swap places, then they'll be gaining 20 points, which means they will be tied on points. And having had a couple of wins, Nitavalex will be then leading on countback as well. So I think, from a team perspective, it could be worth Nitavalex swapping those cars purely for the championship, trying to get that 2nd place in the championship. And that will put them in a good place, having to simply just beat Evolution on track in Spa, rather than having to beat them and have some cars in between them as well to get that 2nd place in the championship, which wouldn't be too bad for that entry, safe to be said. Whereas the number 30 is only 1 place behind in the championship, but they are 21 points behind, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to do something. So I think mathematically speaking, for Nitavalex, it could work to swap those two. But again, that's if they really care about finishing 2nd in the championship. If they're just here for some fun, if they're here to get some race wins, then albeit they can keep pushing on rather nicely to try and get both cars being winners in this season that has been dominated so much by Burst.
Yeah, you're getting that car to lose 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap. It's going to be a tall order. Because you can't just pull over, slam on the brakes and let the other car go through. Because there's 9.5 seconds between the two of them.
Yeah, that gap has stayed fairly stable as well. So it doesn't look like there's any sort of difference between these drivers that are in the car. That are in the car now. It doesn't look like there's any sort of team telling them what to do. I'm sure, from my knowledge of the team anyway, I think they are pretty much just going to be going flat out no team orders. But I was just thinking from the championship point of view, maybe that would benefit them, considering the points difference between 1st and 2nd is 10 points, which would be quite crucial in that gap, which is 20 points. So that's half the gap already if they can just swap those positions. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if they do go to the end as they are. And Go Team Racing really are the ones sort of losing out just a little bit. They're going to be losing another 2 points to Evolution. So that is getting quite tight between them, considering they're already 5 points behind. So then they're going to be 7 points behind coming into the final race of the season. So yeah, it was going to change really, or has the potential to change, I should say, when we get to that final race in Spa in a month's time.
Set us up for a decent finale. That's from an entertainment perspective, that's what you'd want. But I'm sure from a sporting perspective and from the team's perspective, they want to get that as quickly and done with as quickly as possible. But here we are watching Mika Happinen. I've got to be so tempting to say Mika Hakkinen, isn't it? But he's leading his teammate Jake de Stoop by just over 10 seconds as he comes through the spoon curve. Just 2 retirements from this race. Lost the speedy Mike car of Osasioi Emenwen. I've butchered that, I do apologise. And Gasper Zupan for the Troy and Donut Automotive team. As a yellow in Sector 1 comes out for Roman Priprial, I think, was that. It was just taking a little bit of a tumble as he's fighting with Thomas Andrea Mario Soa through Sector 1. That was close.
That's a nice shot there of just having a bit of a slip angle through 130R. Also using a lot of that curb there for some of the drivers. Very nice camera angle there to see really the speed of these cars as well. Obviously, they're being GT3 cars. They're not the absolute quickest cars in the world, but they're still very, very fast. And they certainly have a lot of capabilities. And still provide a good challenge for these drivers. And yeah, I was just checking the standings, and yeah, for Burst Esport, yeah, they basically just needed to not lose points to Evolution, which currently they are doing so. And even if they did, Evolution would need to finish basically in 5th place, which is ironically where they are. But that is with Burst Esports scoring no points, and with the lowest that they can finish at the moment being 20th, then that is looking pretty good for them to take the title here with just over 30 minutes to go. And the title obviously brings some prize as well, which is good to see. We had some prize last year for VLMC as well, and that's continued this year for GT3 Endurance as well, which is always nice to see. And I believe it is €500 going to the winning team. So that is going to be a nice prize for Burst Esport to split amongst themselves. There's been quite a few drivers in that team, but I'm sure they will get a nice share of that.
Yeah, always good to be rewarded financially for hard work, isn't it? And so with esports starting to take off, hopefully the prize money will increase as the years go by and push the competition up and give us some even better racing. But still watching Thomas Jacobs and Yuri Slusel flying around the track, rip those brake markers, having to really second guess where you need to brake in the braking zone for the final chicane with 30 minutes remaining on the clock.
So we just hit that 30 minutes, and this is quite a crucial point for the race, for the finish of the race, because this is now where obviously roughly working on an hour per stint. So you need to have roughly half a tank worth of fuel, maybe just under, at this point in the race. So this is where you can start doing some fuel calculations to make sure that you're going to be all good towards the end. You would hope that you would have already worked that out, but sometimes mistakes can be made in the pit stops, especially when you're sort of under fueling the car or doing something similar to that. And as it looks like from the standings, it looks like there's a couple of battles to look out for as we get towards this final 30 minutes. We obviously have the two Nita Velixes slightly closing down on each other, but also in 8th place we've got Muscala getting on the back of One Move Esports as well. That's getting pretty close, as well as this battle for 11th. And we also have to see if Burst Esport can do anything with that battle. The battle for 2nd place. They have dropped off just a little bit, so you would be surprised if that swaps around, but they have done a bit of a crazy strategy, and it would be cool to see if that can come back in their favour.
Yeah, as we said at the top of the show, Burst pretty much just has to finish in the top 10 to be assured of the title. Tried a strategy move maybe to get them up to the top come the end of the race. Hasn't really worked out well for them, but still on the podium at the race they pretty much take the championship, so it's not a big loss at the end of the day.
Yeah. Also, the thing for Burst as well, it's not just about winning the race per se, but in the first 5 races of the season, they had 4 wins and 1 second place. And it wasn't until last race where they had that bit of an issue with David Mocek, which is why they obviously went down the field quite a little bit on that day. But for them, it's obviously wanting to keep that podium record going as well. Because if you can finish, with a normal legit race, you can finish on the podium every race of the season. That is also a very good accolade to have, showing that you're not only fast but you are consistent. And yes, some of the races they won maybe a little bit easier than others, but still they've done a very good job to be in the position that they are. And if they can keep that podium streak going, which is looking fairly likely at the moment with 28 seconds to Monaco, then that's going to be something they should be fairly proud of as well.
Being the fastest guy on the track is, everybody wants to be the fastest guy on the track, but if you're not consistently quick and you win a race and then you crash out the next 4, you're not going to win a championship. But if you can win 3 or 4 races over the course of the season and finish on the podium in the rest of them, then you're in a very good spot. So when you see like hot lappers trying to get into races and they don't last very long, it's like, well, you need to play the long game as well as play the short game.
And especially in a 8-race season with 3 hours of racing as well, 24 hours of racing during the season. It's quite an important factor to be consistent. You're effectively, as we said, doing a 24-hour race over the course of the season, and there's plenty of things that can happen during that. The main factor that we've got this season is we've got 8 completely different tracks. We've got the BOP changing during the season as well. There's all sorts of factors to come into it, but now we're going to focus on Christian Muscala trying to get past Ludovic Ferrari in that 7th place position at the moment. Muscala having a very good race. They've struggled a few times this season, but they're finally having a really good race here with Andre doing a good start, and now the other brother of Christian trying to get this 7th place of One Move Esports, who have had a fairly decent race so far. Nothing really to challenge the big boys, but still a fairly decent race. And that little slide is not going to help this, because Muscala is getting very close now.
Yeah, Muscala will be trying to get into the slipstream of that Bentley, which will be punching quite the hole in the air in front, but the Muscala McLaren not quite there yet. I mean, that Bentley almost providing a total eclipse of the McLaren, given how big it is, but I think Muscala might have lost a couple of K over the curb at 130R and not close enough to make a move into the chicane. But he's nice and close for the second part of the chicane. If he can get the power down, maybe not. And he's not going to be close enough for turn 1.
He's not quite close enough on this one to get that, but that's going to be a prime place for him. He's got 24 minutes to do this. He doesn't really have a challenge from behind, with Volante being 38 seconds behind. They don't really have anything in front, with Go Team being 24 seconds ahead of him. So it's really just all about this battle and seeing if he can get past. Muscala's still fairly new to sort of just racing up the inside there, and Dunlop was almost close enough. He actually drove for my team flag last year, picked him up halfway through the season in VEC, and he really didn't have too much experience at all. He's really just starting to get into it, and very keen to get involved. And a year and a bit later, he's here fighting with One Move Esports, which is one of the more well-known teams, let's say, during in SimRacing.Club at least. And this is a good opportunity for him to try and prove something, see what he can do. Unfortunately, he can't quite get close enough just yet. The Bentley of One Move Esports is doing a good job to hold on to that 7th place, but as we get towards the end of the race, you're going to see that Bentley sliding and moving around a lot more, and that's just going to put it in the favour of Christian Muscala.
Yeah, I've been seeing that Bentley do quite well in GT Pro, so it seems to be, I mean, that Bentley's just got some great straight line speed considering how big it is. I mean, it looks massive, but it only weighs about 1.5 tons, so with fuel and all that stuff in it. As Muscala sends it into the chicane, and it's a carbon copy of what we saw earlier. Cuts the chicane, has to hand the place back. Try again.
Yeah, try again. It's certainly been the name of the game. Strategy has, to be honest, in many ways been kingless, as well as obviously not going for too many spins. But yeah, strategy has certainly been the important factor for today's race. It's been one of those where it's not been impossible to overtake, but you have to really you have to do something to get yourself in a position to be able to do so. It's not given to you. You have to work for it. And now Muscala once again trying to get the inside of Dunlop. It's going to be just a little bit too late, and that's going to lose him some time up the hill as well. So if he can try and use that momentum in a good way, then I think he'll be able to get himself in that position. But so far, Ludovic is doing a very good job to defend.
As they say, catching is one thing, passing is another. As Muscala gets so deep on the brakes, you can probably sense a bit of frustration in that he desperately wants to get past. But the more he keeps sending it deep into chicanes, and the more he keeps sending it deep into the hairpin, the more Ferrari's going to pull away.
Yeah, Ferrari has been making some little mistakes here and there, but this time round he's doing a good job to hold on for this position. And he's doing a fairly decent job there in general. He's obviously had that car for 2 hours, so De Croo only did the first hour, then swapping over to Ferrari, who has also made some improvements in the recent year or two, having joined that team. But once again, he makes a bit of a mistake, and that is going to give Muscala an amazing opportunity there to come down the start-finish straight. He's going to be not quite in a slipstream, but he's going to be close enough to see what he can do, either inside or outside. Going down the inside will be much easier to judge the distance, but is he going to be close enough to have a dive there? It's going to be just a little bit too late, and unfortunately, he's not been able to make that one work. But Ferrari is going to slightly give him a second opportunity, but just does enough to hold on there, as he's going to have the inside for turn 3 as well. So Muscala all over the grass there. He's really going to have to try something to get past, because it seems like Bentley is certainly holding its own in the straight line as well.
Well, Ferrari's made a slight mistake into turn 1, lost the back end slightly, so Muscala... Oh, there we go. that just negates everything I needed to say then. It was just like, if Muscala calmed down and just kept that pressure up, Ferrari would make another mistake. And as I was about to say that, he made a mistake, and Muscala's got himself 7th position, so ignore me.
Yeah, so Muscala getting 7th place, and Ferrari down into 8th place, although it looks like
is he going to be position back?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a change of position. That's going to have to be done once again.
That's
and
weird.
That is going to then have to work up that momentum once again. But Ferrari going a little bit wide there and Spoon, kind of giving Christian an opportunity. Always a bit interesting when you see a driver give back a position. So it goes all over the grass there.
I mean, he didn't touch him. Well, it's not that I saw.
Let's have a look at this again.
Oh, he did.
Gets a little bit of a nudge there. Okay, so he probably thought that was just a little bit too much to allow. Although he's going to dive it down all over that curve.
It's going to be a cut track, and he's got a penalty for it.
He's going to be... Takes it straight away. He's going to be kicking himself for that, because that was just a little bit of a late dive. He had to back out of it, and the only real place he had to go was over the curb.
Yeah, he was just trying to send it. It's quite... Yes, it is difficult to overtake, but you can't send it like that into the late braking zones here. You've got to be a bit closer before you start doing that. I mean, he was putting him under enough pressure that he would have made a mistake eventually, but... Muscala just overdriving the car as we see a move at the inside of 130R. No, bit of a wiggle from the Snow Shattered Esports McLaren. So that's going to bring core team into play. Round the outside of the chicane. Can he hold it? No.
That chicane is really really awkward, where if you don't go over that first apex, you have to take a really wide line, and unfortunately it doesn't often work. So here's Muscala. He's going to absolutely send it down the inside, but just way too late. Had to go over the curb to avoid it, and unfortunately getting a cut track there. And sometimes that's just how the world works. He thought he had the 7th place, gave it back, and then ended up with that, as we now jump to Happinen, who is leading the race by still about 9 seconds, which has been the case for quite a while now. So fairly similar pace between these two Setros and Itavelix cars, and no sign of them doing any sort of switcheroo. So fair play to them going out to get the number 30. A race victory. Has had a 2nd place finish so far this season, back at the 5th round of the season. Obviously won 7 today, but not a race win, so I assume that they'll be very happy to get that race victory. Obviously they still got 16.5 minutes to go, and anything can happen, but it does look like Jake Destoot is not quite going to be able to get there, at least with the pace that we've seen so far.
Yeah, they've 9 seconds to the leader, another 13 back to Jone Simičić. Down past the support pits and over the crossover. That traffic ahead, that'll be the Volante car. So I've also been reliably informed that the cutting of the chicane was avoiding hitting after missing a braking point. So it was fun to watch while it lasted, but yeah, things happen, don't they?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is just the way racing goes sometimes. It is a bit unfortunate. It was, yeah, I mean, some people probably wouldn't have given the place back like Christian did, but then that obviously is always a bit of a weird one with the mentality and the mindset. You have to sort of get back into it. You know, first thinking, oh yeah, I've got the position, then you have to go back behind, so it can be a bit of an awkward one. Obviously, just misjudged the braking zone. But that is quite a difficult one there, especially when brake marker boards get
yeeted.
By cars spinning around. It does make it quite difficult, and obviously when you're in a battle like that, you're so focused on the car ahead, you often miss references and things like that. But looking at the car on screen, Jone Simičić, this is a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Just not really having the pace today to challenge those Nita Velix cars. Not only in qualifying initially with Michi Hoyer, but then also through the hints that we've seen so far. Burst haven't quite been on the ball as we've seen them so far, but then again, they probably realise, oh yeah, we've got 2 races to go. Nice big lead in the championship. They don't need to prepare quite to the same degree that they may have on other occasions during the point of the season. And I'm sure even if it finishes differently to this, they will still be champions and happy to do so, because then that will make the next race in Spa a nice comfortable race where they can have a bit of fun, and maybe even do a second driver swap to have 3 drivers finish off the season.
Yeah, might as well. There's no pressure. Just go out there, have some fun, and enjoy yourself. I mean, that is what sim racing is about, isn't it? Having fun, enjoying yourself, so why not?
Yeah, that is something that can be lost a little bit with the way that the scene is going. Obviously, it's getting a lot more serious. You know, even in this series as well, we got prize money getting involved. You get teams. You can see all the sponsors on pretty much all of the cars on the grid as well. There's there's things on the line, but at the end of the day, it still needs to be fun for everyone. So here we see the championship on the screen very briefly, but just to also confirm, now there's 80 points difference between Burst and Evolution and with there only being 50 points after this race, they're pretty much guaranteed to win, unless Evolution gain those 30 points back on them this race, which they are not doing so currently. And let's come into the hairpin. We've got Volante up the road for Yanni to put another lap on.
Colin McGowan exiting the hairpin with Yuri Slusil in behind. Just about 0.3 of a second between the two of them as they head up the hill towards the spoon curve. Can McGowan hold on for that 11th place, but Slusil looking racy in that BMW. See what the straight line speed of that BMW is like up towards the 130R. He's having a look at that, getting past the Porsche here.
Side by side coming up towards 130R. Who's going to be the bravest, inside or outside? It looks like Sluzel there on the inside, although they both go wide actually. McGowan getting pushed off just a little bit there really, but it's always almost impossible actually to go side by side there in that corner. Very, very difficult to keep both cars on. But I wouldn't be surprised actually if they got a cut track from that, so got to be careful, as we saw with Muscala getting that penalty. So he's going to have to try and get ahead at another point. But there's still just over 11 minutes left in the race, so he's got quite a few more laps to do so.
Yep. Just over 11 minutes remaining, so into the final 5 laps or so.
And obviously it depends where the leader is. As, even if they cross the line with 2 seconds to go, then they have to do another lap. Often in some of those situations where it's that close, you do see the leader slow down to avoid doing an extra lap. But sometimes when obviously it's around like 10 seconds, with the gap being only 7.5, he then wouldn't be able to slow down that much as he would get overtaken before the line. And talking of that, that is, it's getting a little bit closer between the two Nita Velux cars. But the gap to SimChase has also gone out a little bit, so I think that is pretty much just Duped getting a little bit closer relative to his teammate compared to Simičić. But I think Simičić and the leader seem to have fairly similar pace. Just hasn't quite been in Burst Esports way to get the victory. But now 10 minutes to go in the 3 hours of Suzuka. It doesn't look like we're going to be getting much of a sunrise, just still a little bit too early. The race did start at 2 o'clock in the morning, local time as such, so that is obviously only going to end around 5 o'clock, so not quite enough to see some sunrise just yet. But a full 3 hours of darkness for these drivers. I'm sure it's something that they focused on, but it does seem that for the most part people haven't been making any other mistakes, and I think some drivers actually prefer driving at night.
Yeah, every driver's got their strengths and weaknesses and what they prefer doing and what they don't prefer doing. I personally hate driving at night in real life and in Sims. So fair play to them for being able to drive this fast and then do it all in the day in something else.
Yeah, for me, and back in my driving day, as they say, I always liked the night stints. I felt I could concentrate more because obviously you physically just see less. You only see what the headlights see right ahead of you. And there's way less distractions and things. It makes it a lot easier, but then obviously that just depends on the type of person that you are and how you cope in those sorts of situations. But yeah, I do always like them, and it's certainly a bit of a cool experience to do races there. Especially when you get to a point where you're sort of on your own for a few laps and you're just doing lap after lap. And it's just like sort of real life when you go out tonight, it feels like you're sort of on your own. It's quite a cool experience. As we see it happening now, come up towards Muscala, who actually kept his 8th position. He's only 11 seconds behind Ferrari after doing his drive-through. So He didn't really lose too much time in the grand scheme of things. That's actually down to about 10 seconds now. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, hasn't really done too much. And he's still got plenty of time to Volante behind. So probably not enough for Muscala to get back up into that fight for 7th. But considering the circumstances, he won't be too happy or too unhappy, I should say, with that 8th place.
This is Cascan for Caspian Motorsport, running around in Plum last. Unfortunate for them. He's a lap behind the next car, so it really hasn't gone well for Caspian Motorsports tonight. There's Gonzalo Costa for Omicron Sim Racing, just ahead, with a car that ended up in the wars early on in the race. It's still circulating, and then Jerome Brioleo for Flying Goat heading through the Degners with just over 6.5 minutes remaining.
Andrea Maharazo here in 17th place, 2 laps down to the leader after pretty much just coming up for 3 hours. Always he goes a bit wide there. He has to be very careful to not do a spin there, so he's able to do that. They're 2 laps in 3 hours. Isn't really the end of the world as such. Obviously, some teams would always want to keep on the lead lap. As long as you're on the lead lap, you always have a bit of an opportunity for something to happen. Going a lap down is always very difficult because you're just stuck in blue flags after blue flags. As leaders come past you, playing for Joy Racing, 2 laps down, 38 seconds to the next car as well. So I think this car that was a little bit higher up earlier on, there'll be a little bit. Always someone is going completely backwards there. Caspian reversing around the track basically. I would assume they went just a little bit too wide there for Degner 1, and then went into the gravel. But that is a bit of a weird one to see a car reversing the short pit rule. I was a bit surprised by that.
Yeah, it's not good when you see a car going backwards or across the track and you're approaching at a rate of knots, because you think, where's he going? If I try to avoid him, am I going to end up in his accident? And is that going to ruin my race in the final 5 minutes, and all that work you've put in for the 2 hours and 55 prior to that just gone down the drain, sitting in the pit lane getting it fixed. So here's a replay of F.E. Cascan. Just lost it at the first Degner and just let the car roll. I see what he's tried to do, tried to get it out of the way, but the rules are when you spin, hit the brake pedal.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird one, because what he did in the end was like the
J-turn out of the way, yeah.
Yeah, the way it worked out actually was kind of okay, because it put him towards the inside of the track, and obviously the race line so it goes to the outside of that corner. But yeah, there is a rule, and it's pretty clear. Failed to lock brakes is the term. Once you go for a bit of an accident like that, you are required to hold the brakes until you come to a complete stop, so that you are moving in a predictable manner. Sometimes, obviously, it may make a situation worse, but at least it's a hard and fast rule. Everyone obviously should know that after doing a few races. So
it's in the academy, so it's in the rule book there, but. It's quite a weird rule or weirdly worded rule, because these cars have anti-lock brake systems, so you don't really lock the brakes. It's just failure to hold brakes.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, GT3s do have ABS, which obviously makes that a little bit more difficult. But you still see every now and again drivers still absolutely. When as you yeet on the brakes, you can get a little bit, not necessarily locking up, but sort of sliding in some interesting ways.
You try to save your tyres by doing it, don't you? It's
Yeah, it is. Well, actually, in general, the GT3s with the ABS, it actually makes it for quite interesting driving style, because obviously in a lot of cars, you would brake really hard initially while you still have the downforce, then you'd bleed off the brake pedal coming into the corner. But with the GT3, especially into a hairpin, you literally just stay full on the brakes, pretty much to your turning in, because you can just rely on the ABS to sort of do it for you. A little bit in that regard, but it makes it for quite an interesting driving style, and quite a difficult one really, which is sometimes why we see the field spread that we do, because the top drivers are just so good at getting that balance at the corner entry.
Unfortunately, this isn't a battle for position in front of us. Bart Slavogian in the Valencia racing car, lapping traffic, giving a thank you flash for moving over. It should be, I think, once Mika Happinen crosses the line, it will be the final lap of this race. Assuming he's not already started. Oh yeah, this will be the final lap then.
Yeah, this might just be the final lap. The 2 minutes a lap, and they were quite far. But yeah, I think this might just be into the final lap. But there's only 5 seconds to the car behind, so if it's a little bit close on time, he doesn't really have that much buffer to slow down. So that number 60 is certainly coming back at them, but it certainly seems like he does have a bit of a sort of a calm nature about his driving, and that gap has been coming down very, very, very slowly over the course of the whole stint. As we jump to Russo, who's got back in that car. He was in there in that first stint when unfortunately made the error. That really cost him a chance to battle for that sort of third, fourth position. Looking how far they dropped back, maybe they didn't quite have the pace today anyway. I'm sure they'll be a little bit disappointed with that. And Evolution Motorsports, they've done pretty well this season. Unfortunately, with the way it is standing, they will be losing the championship here today to Burst Esport, although that was fairly expected, such as the way that Burst Esport have already got 4 wins this season. And these guys are obviously on the top of their game. It's a very difficult task for Evolution, and I'm sure with the likes of RHG and Williams, had they shown up for the whole season, then they would have been in there battling as well. So Evolution probably weren't really expecting to be in that battle for the title, but yeah, Borja Milan now in 4th place as well, looking very good. And we are at 0 minutes remaining, and it's going to be... Oh, did they swap? They swapped on the final lap of the race. That is Jake Destouts getting the number 60, that win for Cetra's Nita Velix. They swapped there on the final lap, probably final corner as well. So number 60 takes victory from the number 30. Number 30 was quicker all race, but on that final, that is an interesting one. I really thought they weren't going to do it. But
let's make or buy for the championship.
Yeah, so in that, oh god, look how far, oh look how late they did it actually. Really right at the end of the race, and that means that Evolution and the number 60 will be tied on points coming into the final race of the season at Spa, with Nita Velix only ahead due to them winning the race. So that is going to be a very interesting prospect for the person getting second in the championship, as there will only be 3 more hours of racing in 1 month's time. So just to confirm, that it's the number 60 getting past on that final corner to take victory. They got victory last time out in Bathurst as well, and it's the sister car, the number 30, getting 2nd place from Burst Esport, the number 49 there, who are your champions for the GT3 Endurance Series. They have been dominant throughout the season, and even today, when they had not so great of a race, they still managed to bring it home in 3rd place to secure that championship. And I'm sure they're going to be very delighted with that, as well as the €500 coming their way after the season as well. Then Wanaka will be so happy to actually finally finish a race in a good position, 4th place. Nico Barkley, his teammate, will be a little bit Disappointed with the spin that he had earlier, cost him really that position for third place. Evolution Motorsports down in fifth place, having a fairly solid race, but not really anything to shout about. And then Go Team Racing in sixth place. So that is a fairly nice result for those drivers, and I'm sure Nita Velix will be happy to get a 1-2, not only in qualifying, but to keep that in the race as well. So fair play to those guys for getting another victory this season.
Yeah, it'll be good for Nita Velox to take the fight to the final round at Spa, which will be in about a month's time. So subscribe to the SimRacing.Club YouTube channel and get the alerts on for when that goes live, because it's going to be an absolute cracker at the end.
Well, exactly. So we've still got another race to come, and as you see obviously the results coming through the screen here. So we did end up with quite a few drivers finishing the race, 20, but obviously there are quite a few laps down. And yeah, that's going to be it for the 3 hours of Silverstone. It's quite an interesting race, quite an interesting circuit. And obviously, in the end, it ended up being Burst Esport taking victory in the championship, but it was Setras and Nita Velix getting victory on the track. And I'm sure that's going to open up to a pretty interesting race when we get to Spa next time out. So I would be surprised if we get another good race there.
Spa's produced some good racing in the past. It's got the fast sections between La Source and Lake Calm, and then Stavolo up towards the bus stop. So we should see a good slipstream fight, as well as the teams trying to make the cars handle well through that middle sector as well. So yeah, I can't wait for Spa. It's going to be a brilliant one.
Just before we finish, we'll get a word with the champions this season. As you see, this Burst Esport in season 1 of the GT3 Endurance campaigns. So, yeah, mate, congratulations, and also obviously got a guest podcast in your car as well. So with one race to go, we are champions, and how does that feel?
It's pretty amazing. Like, it's a mega team effort, and probably in the end more clear than one would guess, especially before the beginning of the season. But like the first 3 or 4 races have been incredibly difficult with Williams and RNG on the line. Also think Drillis had a pretty strong lineup, so to come out in the championship lead after 3-4 rounds with some multiple points clear was certainly helping. I mean, in the end it looked like smooth sailing, but yeah, it was still like a big team effort. Massive congrats and thank you for David and Jane and Jesper for putting in the work. And well, yeah, now we're taking home the trophy as a reward. It's just great.
Yeah, there. I just wanted to ask you specifically about this race actually. Were you sort of fuel saving in that final stint as well, or were you just because I really thought you were going to get a little bit more to these guys.
Well, I was on the same set of tires, and I expected that cars behind me would catch me. Distance, so I was honestly quite surprised that I stabilized very speedily and didn't drive away from the cars behind. It was mid-race call to stay on the same tires by myself, as it looked to be the only way to jump Evo and Wanapo. It worked in the end, so yeah.
You're certainly been some kings of the strategy this season, and as we come into the final race as well, we've still got 3 hours of Spa. So are you going to try anything crazy, or are you just going to see how the race goes there?
We will probably do a few laps on Friday before racing, see how the car varies, and try to come up with something fun of it. The main
congratulations to the teammates as well. Try and get at least on the podium next time. So we'll see you then. Good job.
Thank you.
Suzuka, 3 hours of Suzuka done in the dark. The next race now is in Spa. 3 hours of Spa in 1 month's time, on the 22nd of May. So thank you for watching. To tune in to the VEC race in 2 weeks' time as well. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.